to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance after he gives either an invocation or thought of his pleasure. Councilman Galvez.
All right, I'll go with my invocation tonight. Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this moment to meet as a city council and as residents to talk about the needs of the city. And we're grateful that we live in such a beautiful community and such a nice place, and to have such great neighbors that surround us. We ask that we can render good decisions tonight that will be for the best of the city and best of the residents, and that we can have an open mind to the different topics that are being discussed and different viewpoints. And we're grateful for all that we have and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right, please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Galvez. Appreciate you doing that for us. We have a presentation this evening. Jonathan Perry, who is with the Weaver Water Conservancy District, is going to what he called a 10-minute presentation.
7.5.
Oh, you keep negotiating
Even
down.
better. Well, I understand how these meetings go. We got things to do. So hopefully I can just address a couple of questions that I know exist and maybe give a little bit of background as to why some of those questions may exist and why the district is engaged in some of the programs that we are. So first of all, we can go to the next slide. It's a little small. You know, these things always look great on your computer screen and you don't know where you're going to be presenting, so I apologize for that. But real quick, I just want to point out the district is the manager of the Federal Weaver Basin project, which was constructed in the 1960s. We've got several mission statements, but that first one there is really what we're going to be talking about today, which is to conserve and develop water resources of the Weaver drainage. Go to the next slide. So this is who we are. When we talk about Weaver Basin and its conservation programs, these programs are available to the entirety of our service area, which is the entirety of Weaver, Davis, Summit, and Morgan counties. So I know there's been some confusion before about, hey, are these turf incentive programs going to be available to North Ogden City, recognizing that you're not directly a customer agency of the district. We don't wholesale water to you. By virtue of living within the larger footprint of the district service area, you would be eligible for the district's regional conservation programs, one of which is the turf incentive program. All right, next slide. So real quickly, this is just an overview of the district's portfolio. As a regional water supplier, we are tasked with ensuring the development of adequate water resources for our region's demands. As it sits right now, a bulk of our water is tied up in M&I, so municipal and industrial water, whether it's untreated or treated water. And then the balance is what we call agricultural and replacement water contracts. One thing of note is that our project does have an environmental obligation to the Ogden Bay Wildlife Refuge. And so by contract, we are delivering anywhere from 60 to 80,000 acre feet of water annually to the Ogden Bay Wildlife Refuge and by connectivity, the Great Salt Lake. This last year, it was about 600,000 acre feet that was delivered through the Weaver drainage. And we anticipate that to be, 400-ish or so, but we're still a ways out from being able to solidify that. All right, next slide. This is just showing where those environmental flows go. The Plain City Gauge is kind of the dictator. You can see those flow requirements vary throughout the year based on negotiations had with the Division of Wildlife Resources. Next slide. Just like the district has to manage our supplies and the demands of our system, North Ogden does the same thing. This is just a quick analysis on division of water rights. It appears as though you guys have about 8 sources of water, predominantly wells, a few springs, and then Pineview Water. I reached out to them, and between you and several other communities, there's 9,000 to 10,000 acre feet that they deliver annually. And that's just an overview. As we all know, there's impacts to withdrawing water from wells in the natural environment. So those are just snapshots taken from the USGS. So just be mindful. I'm sure your staff is, as you're doing the kind of the planning aspect of North Ogden. Where's the water going to come from with the growth that's coming, with the environmental considerations and things like that. Next slide. So like I mentioned, we do supply and demand studies. We're currently engaged in the production of a supply and demand study where we've broken up the district service area into about 7 different sub areas, one of which is the Wasatch Front Weaver County area. You can see as we do these planning efforts, we project 8 or so different scenarios of population, well, 3 different population scenarios and about 4 different demand scenarios that incorporate kind of what we're going to do conservation wise and how successful we may or may not be. Next slide. We do all that because we have been tasked with ensuring adequate water resources of our area. One of the things that we've also been tasked with is meeting the state's regional conservation goals, which hopefully you guys are aware of as well. As a water supplier, we've all been asked to, and maybe ask is a little bit too nice of a term. We've been told that these are the goals that we're supposed to have. If you look at the very bottom there, the Weaver River drainage, in 2015, they had us as a 250 gallons per capita per day water usage. And we're supposed to be down to 200 by the year 2030, 184 by 2040, and 175 by 2065. Those are significant reductions in water usage, and they require a lot of aggressive conservation programs, a change in the way we develop and grow, and just a shift in mindsets. This all goes to support why we are engaged in our conservation programs, why the district will be putting money towards these programs. We really need to extend our existing developed supplies as far as possible to meet those demands moving forward. Next slide. So how are we going to do that? The district completed a water conservation and management study a few years back where we evaluated, I think it was 80 some odd different conservation programs. We met with a lot of our customer agencies and stakeholders to evaluate the applicability of those programs and kind of the success rate that we would assume to be available as we implemented those. So there you can see we've identified about 18 different programs. A majority of them we are engaged in. The 2 that are kind of outlined are these landscape incentive programs and ordinances that we're talking about. Next slide. This just kind of shows where we've been trending. I tried to overlay at least what the Division of Water Rights has for North Ogden with those yellow circles. So you can see it kind of jumps around. It's very climate dependent weather patterns that we experience from year to year. But North Ogden, just like the balance of the Weaver drainage, has a ways to go to meet those regional conservation goals. Next slide. This one is just showing a similar kind of usage pattern. I think the most interesting one is the pie chart there. So at least with the rough numbers that the state has, you can see about 76% of the water usage in North Ogden is for outdoor irrigation. Next slide. These are our supply and demand study projections. As you can see, if we can meet those lower GPCD or gallons per capita per day projections, we extend that existing supply out so we're not exhausting what we've developed already any sooner than we need to. So you can see that top line, that's a kind of a continuation of historic demand patterns. You can see different levels of conservation result in us being able to extend those supplies even farther, recognizing population growth. Next slide. We'll skip this one. Next slide. Okay, so what are we doing? We've got several conservation programs. The one I think we want to talk about today is our turf incentive program. So a couple of years ago, we introduced the Flip Your Strip program. That program is now expanded to be the landscape lawn exchange program. Flip Your Strip was only applicable to park strips. The landscape lawn exchange program is applicable to the entirety of existing development. The one thing we are asking communities to do is adopt standards and ordinances for new growth and new development to ensure that as the growth comes in, it's being developed with these water-wise standards in place. What those standards are, go to the next slide, please. We'll skip that one. Next slide, next slide, next slide. Right here. So no lawn in parking strips or areas with widths less than 8 feet wide, 8 feet wide widths. 35% of the front and side yard can be turf, but no more. And then new commercial, industrial, and institutional spaces, multifamily, limited to 20% of the total irrigated space for turf grass. New development, commercial, industrial, institutional, multifamily, and single-family residential is what we're asking for. That's the balance of our program. So the questions were, why would Weaver Basin be doing this? And is it available in North Ogden? We're doing it because we're a regional water supplier and we want to extend that existing supply as far as possible. Is North Ogden eligible? Yes, provided these standards and ordinances are adopted within your city code. And with that, I guess if there's any questions, I'll take those. Might have been a little longer than 7 minutes.
Great job. Thank you. You did excellent. Councilmember Dalpas.
Thanks for coming. This is great. We've had quite a few residents over the last couple of years that I've been on the council that have been asking about Flip the Strip. Sure, Ryan would agree. Others that have been, Blake would have seen that as well. And so is this something that we, after we adopt the ordinance, if we decide to do this, is it an individual program that Weaver, that the Weaver Conservancy District works with North Ogden City, or do our residents go directly to you to get the Flip the Strip? How does that work?
Yeah, so it'd be administered by the district. So essentially what we ask to do is work with you to adopt those ordinances, make sure they meet the state and district requirements, because the state is funding parts of this program. Once we've done that, we'll put you on the list of eligible communities. We open up North Ogden to be on our list of eligible communities. They apply, we administer, we do everything on our side of things. We have partnered with a couple communities that wanted to put their own monies also into the program. So we've got Ogden City that's got some monies that are being put into the program, and Park City area. And so we've set those up to basically meet their needs, but for the other 18 or so communities that have engaged in this program, it's literally adopt the ordinances, let us know the ordinances have been adopted, and we verify they meet the requirements. We open it up within Utah Water Savers is what it's been historically. We're going to be transitioning to a Weaver Basin centric administered site, but that's what it would be. They'd go to us, they'd apply, our staff would walk into the process. We cut the checks and do everything.
And any cities authorized in Weber County yet?
Yeah, in Weaver County, I think Far West has gone and done it, Washington Terrace City. Ogden is doing a flip your script. They haven't quite gone to the levels of doing the landscape lawn exchange. And I think there's a couple others, but I have to look at our list.
Thanks.
Any other questions? John, I think you've always pointed out that the city would have to inspect for compliance, or does that done by Weaver Basin?
So as part of the program, the applicants come to us. We want to make sure these are projects that are done well and they're sustainable. So we require them to participate in a class and do kind of a pre-site inspection virtually, where we walk through their plan that they submit. We let them know kind of how they're going to have to transition from the overhead to the drip irrigation, some things to consider, and walk through the program requirements. When they are done, they go back into the administrative softwares and let us know they're done, at which point staff come out and do the inspection to make sure they've met the program requirements. We do encourage, as you're going through your ordinances, if you have specific things that you want in those landscape ordinances, you want trees or you want a certain amount of ground coverage and things like that, that we work through that to make sure that the residents are aware of that. And we would do something, basically let the residents know what your requirements are and work to try and help inspect it.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. Excellent
Okay.
information.
Absolutely. Let me know if you guys want to talk anymore.
Okay.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks.
I guess you're not if you're staying.
Well, I'm gonna put my coat on and I'm gonna, you guys can talk about me all you want, so.
All right. Well, thanks for coming. We appreciate that. Thanks, Councilmember Galvez. I think you and Ryan instigated that. Follow up, John and Scott, on those requirements and make sure that they have in our ordinance. All right. With that, we'll go into our consent agenda this evening. Anyone have any conflicts they would like to disclose based upon tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on then. Move on to item number 3, which is public comments. Once again, just as a reminder, if you could limit your comments to items that are on the agenda somewhat or need to be. And please limit your comments to no longer than 5 minutes. And you're welcome to come up here to the podium and state your name and if you're a resident of North Ogden. So with that, we'll open up public comments.
I don't remember how to do this. Do I give my name and address?
You don't even have to give your address. You just have to tell us.
Here
if
in
you live in North
McIntosh.
Ogden.
I live in North Ogden, but I'm against the strip. Sorry, I don't have sidewalk at my house. So I live on Fruitland Drive. Brian knows my pain. So anyway, the reason why I'm here tonight is I see that the issue that Councilman Barker has put on. Several years ago, there was a water main break at my neighbor's house. It went down into their driveway, through their garage, and when they opened up their basement doors, all of the water came into our house. They had 2 feet, we had a foot. Needless to say, the city was there. They came and helped us pump, but we had a lot of damage. At that time, the the amount in the slush fund for damage done by what is a city issue was $5,000. We came and we had a bid completed and ours was way over $10,000. So at that time, I approached the council and asked if you would make an amendment to that so that we would have somewhat of coverage since we had a $10,000 deductible for our insurance to see if the city might up it to 10,000, and the city agreed. I've heard of a situation here, and I just want you to know that's happened in the city. I just want you to know how much that was appreciated. We didn't have to deal with mold because we couldn't afford to come up with that 10 grand to get it fixed. The city stepped in and helped us. And, you know, we haven't had the issue because last summer, guess what they did? They replaced the water main. So we haven't had that issue and I don't plan on having that issue again. But the city was very responsive. And they helped us out a lot. And I know they helped our neighbors out that had the 2 feet of water as well. And so I would just like you to know that the citizens of this city greatly appreciate anything that the city can do for us as residents to make it a little bit easier for our living and lifestyle. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're ready to. I'm Grant Crossman, and although a few of the Barkers have wanted to adopt me and make my last name Barker also. And I'm here to do a little presentation on Barker Park. It's 10 slides and we'll cover it. This is a summary of where we're at. Blake has been really key in his 501c3. Linda and I have done cleanups over there for a long time. We've joined forces, and to date, that's the result. 312 volunteers have donated over 1,800 hours, 3,900 in kind use of equipment, etc. 6,340 in real cost donations, 5,500 in cash. And then from the businesses that are supporting our volunteers, we've had things turned into the extent of about $7,500. Next. This is our mission statement. We're happy to look it over in depth when Councilman Del Paso makes his presentation. But the goal is to take advantage of the unique opportunity we have here in North Ogden. We have the ground, we have the layout, we have the history to make something really special and really superb and unique in this whole area. Next. Barker Park now, as you can see, is big. And since the completion of phase 1, which was the amphitheater, other things have kind of stalled. This is a huge project that needs to be completed in phases. Next. The phase that we've chosen to focus on to make phase 2 consists of 2A and 2B. The 2B part is the island area between the two tree-lined hollows. Next. What we'd really like to focus on, frankly, is the pathways through both of those wooded areas and then Chicken Coop Trail. None of the plans really that have ever been talked about really had anything to do down in those two hollow areas. We've developed a plan that we can implement pretty much with volunteer labor. Chicken Coop Trail has a great unique history. Councilman Barker can talk about how we used to get eggs if you didn't have chickens yourself. And it's a great history. It's a real resource. And there used to be an orchard there. That's one of the things we want to put back in place is the orchard. And then I think next, these are some of the things you see inside the park. If you go down the hollows, it's spectacular in the summer or the winter. Next. What needs to be done? Well, we've got to have a few final clean, pruned, and prepared projects so that we can then start to move in benches and tables and so on and so forth. And those are outlined there. We've had really good turnout. And sometimes it's spectacular, sometimes it's good, you know, and completed quite a bit of work over there. This is some of the examples of what's happened along the trailways. Councilman Severin has a sore back and helping haul some of those logs. So, okay, next. Here's some of the things that we'd like to do. We'd like to take this style and actually make it as a picnic canopy and make it look like a covered wagon. We can do it easily with the Quonset hut materials that are already done, covering it with that thick white roofing material they usually use on flat roofs, and look like a covered wagon. We can do teepees there also and put those over octagonal tables, which I'll show you in a second. We can do benches of recycled wood. This is a bench of mostly recycled wood. I was on the phone today with a manufacturer in Colorado. They usually charge $3,500 for the 6-person picnic table. Whether if they can take advantage of the contribution that they make over here in Utah and Colorado, we're checking on that. He'll get his price
Really
of
close to 5
$1,500.
minutes. I'm gonna call it time.
Okay, next. These are some of the things, the octagonal benches are going to the teepees, those are going to the covered wagons. Next. These are critical things that need to be done, and basically, we need council approval for the thematic approach we want to take through the hollows and Chicken Coop Trail. That's all we're gonna do. And 2 things to point out. Number one, when we sell these benches off, they're gonna be sold off and tables are gonna be sold off at full price plus a little bit. And we're hoping to get everything at cost from manufacturers. Therefore, the difference will go into a permanent repair, replacement, and maintenance fund. So the city's not gonna have to top out a lot of money every year.
Okay, I gotta call time on it.
Okay, I think that's started. If you have questions, ask Councilman Belpass.
Thank you. Good luck in your assignment.
Hi, my name's Genevieve Payne and I live in North Ogden. I wrote down my comments and made them brief to fill the 5-minute time. So at November city council meeting, I went into detail of the destruction of my basement in my home. I'm not going to rehash all those details tonight. Instead, I want to address the council about findings that have taken place since then and request that the council consider the issue with real intent and thought. So our entire basement was flooded May 13th, 2023. The flood was due to large pieces of cement being stuck in the city sewer line just north of our home on 700 East. The debris took many hours for the city to be able to clear because of its nature. We spent over 6 months per the city's request, working through the insurance of both the developer of the new homes across the street from us as well as his cement subcontractor. This was done due to suspicion that one of those parties may have been at fault. Both insurance companies denied the claim and any fault, and they expressed that there was no evidence that pointed to them. And then in October of 2023, more cement was found in the line in the same area in front of my home again. Thankfully, it was removed before another flood occurred. And then in November, when we came to the city council, we discussed a request that the city, we asked for $40,000 roughly to cover the estimate for the restoration of our basement. Instead, the council agreed to pay $5,000 and suggested that we could use that to go towards legal action, such as writing a letter to the developer. And this was despite his insurance, like I said, already doing an investigation and saying that there was no clear evidence of him or his subcontractor being at fault. I was assured many times by the council and the mayor that I was welcome back to come and follow up with this issue as needed. In order to put this amount in perspective, the $5,000, the bill for just cleaning up our basement was $15,000. Since that meeting, the city had testing completed by Intermountain Testing on the cement pieces found in the main line in May, as well as the pieces found in October. While the testing did not prove any origin of the cement, in fact, I actually called and talked to the Intermountain Testing lab specialist, and he explained to me that there's actually no way to prove where the cement came from without having physically just stood there and watched the cement be poured and then watch it where it goes. The testing did, however, prove 2 things, and they were shown the data and a written explanation. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was
the cement pieces that were found in October and May, they were not from the same time and location. So this isn't from just one situation. And the second thing is the cement pipe in front of our home on 700 had a significant difference in strength north and south of the manhole. One was about roughly twice as strong as the other. This is significant because in November, when the city council suggested we pursue personal case, there wasn't any evidence to suggest that then, and now there's actually evidence to go against doing something like that, because this would just prove that the developer wouldn't be at fault because it's from different places and times. In November, we felt that this was a city issue to be resolved and for very clear reasons, but with this additional information, we feel even more so that the city should be financially assisting the restoration of our basement. Knowing that the cement and the lines in front of our home is coming from more than one place in time, which makes me really worried about failing infrastructure. This is something that the city should be really alarmed about, in my opinion, and they should be proactively addressing it on their own. It shouldn't require a citizen's house being destroyed or a citizen coming here asking for you to look into it. It should be something that you would want, in my opinion, to look into on your own. I would also like you to consider the fact that this was not residential debris like diapers or wipes or sanitary pads. It was infrastructural material. The nature of the material is really important because that's the reason why the flood was so bad. It took hours to be removed from the line. It's also why we feel really strongly that residents should not be part of any of this. It was not North Ogden residents' materials causing the issue. It was not North Ogden residents' sewer line that they're in charge of. And it was not North Ogden residents' job to find the source of where the building material came from. All of these issues are plainly those of which the city of North Ogden and its public works are responsible for. We do have an additional rider on our insurance that we chose to add on and pay for, and that's specifically for sewage backup. It's not provided under typical insurance, and the amount of coverage we had when we spoke to our insurance agent was appropriate for our home and for any personal sewage backup we had, and it was also appropriate for if there had been a city backup with residential debris that could be cleared at a typical speed. $55,000 in damages with mitigation and restoration estimates is not something that we would ever need to have covered on our personal insurance. That falls under things that are our responsibility. So in closing, I ask that the city council tonight ask themselves 3 questions when thinking about our home. 1, is there any justification in putting the burden of responsibility on a citizen for infrastructural cement pieces that are found in the city main lines that are managed and maintained by the city? 2, if your own home were flooded with thousands of gallons of city sewage from cement from multiple places in sewer lines that you as a taxpayer contribute to have maintained and taken care of, would you expect responsibility of your home's damages to be taken care of by the city? And 3, would the decision to not financially provide for the restoration of our basement align with the ethics and morals, the principles and the attitudes that this council and city as a whole want to communicate to its citizens? My husband and I are now beginning the very long process of fixing our basement ourselves. We could never come close to affording an outside party to do this work for us.
I've got to call time. I'm sorry.
Okay, I have 2 sentences. Can I read those? Okay. We believe that the city of North Ogden providing funds for just the materials we need to complete the work that we will be doing for likely over a year is the least that they could do for this horrible situation we're in and have been for almost a year and will be in for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Never done this before. My name's Carrie Ann Manning, North Ogden.
Welcome.
Ironically, I wanted to touch on something that relates to both her topic and to the water topic that was being addressed earlier. Because I noted in there, it was talking about the homeowners bearing the brunt of having insurance, right? And she mentioned that she now has sewer insurance. But when you check into those warranties on those companies, I mean, there's like one, what is it called? Service Line Warranties of America. I think that's one that's carried up in Washington Terrace. Did you know that it won't cover the inside of the home? what good is it if it doesn't do that, right? You've just lost everything in your home. My mom lived in the terrace. She was one of those homes that was involved in that huge landslide, and I handled all of her affairs. We were the only home that didn't go back and sue the city and fight. We worked with the city and we helped and we gave them information and, you know, because I understand what's within the sphere of control. So it's not a matter of the city should have to pay for everything, but this is one thing that the city should consider. Because the sewer main, that's located outside my property's boundaries, right? And I don't even know what my pipes, what those, not my pipes, those sewer pipes are constructed of. They have a lifetime of 50 to 100 years usually. So I know that they're probably getting close to that. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. You know, am I allowed to just go out and dig up the road and check and see what they are and see how they're doing? This is a huge concern to me. And I think that the city really needs to consider not telling homeowners, hey, you have to get sewer insurance, because it's not gonna be, you have to really read that fine print. There's so many things that are excluded on a lot of them, you know, acts of God, third parties, natural disaster, or other insurable causes. I mean, it's like a limited span of scenarios where you can actually claim anything on that. We had our home destroyed in 2015 by a flood. Not from sewer, just, you know, little water line in the top of the house broke. It took us 2 years. Well, no, it was 2013. We're in 2024. I still haven't fully finished construction on everything yet, but it took us 2 years to recover to the point that we were able to comfortably live in our home. My heart goes out to this couple over here. They are gonna go through a horrible time, and to find people to come in and do the work. I had so many of those people, the professionals that you have come in and they take a look and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm not touching this. This is a huge mess. And you're like, but I have to have it done. You know, you wind up having to do it yourself sometimes. And it's horrendous. The least the city can do. I mean, we pay to live in an area where we're safe, where we're protected. Just my 2 points.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening like to comment? John, do we have anybody online? Two people.
No raised hands at this point.
My name is Craig Speechwell. I'm a citizen of North Ogden. I became aware of this matter when my son-in-law, Councilman Jay Dalpaz, told me that this would be an item on the agenda tonight regarding the humanitarian aid. I'd like to speak in favor of keeping the humanitarian aid at its current level. The city is asking its taxpayers to cover damages for which we are not liable for. We should always pay for damages that the city is liable for. I don't think that's a question. But the humanitarian fund pays for damages that we are not necessarily liable for. What was the intent of the original policy? It was to help the individuals inflicted by water damage and to offer some compassion, but it was clearly never designed to make them whole again. The current limit already meets the purposes of providing some semblance of compassion for those people impacted for water damage. Otherwise, it's just a government handout. Sewer drain backup coverage is readily available in the open market. I've been in the property and casualty business for 46 years. I know this. Although coverage limits may vary between companies, coverage limits of up to $100,000 is readily available for sewer backup for $50 a year. It's routine, it's available, it's out there in the marketplace. I firmly believe that it's the responsibility of every homeowner to secure the coverage they desire for their own home and regularly review that coverage. Some homeowners choose not to actually go uninsured. This is their right, but it is not the responsibility of North Ogden City to remove or limit that risk. Budget constraints are a concern of mine. Allocating funds for non-city related damages diverts scarce tax resources away from essential services and infrastructure projects, such as completing Barker Park or other direct benefits for the entire community. Increasing the current payments from its current level to $10,000 will lead to increased taxes for the entire community. Fifth, it's a question of fairness. Using public funds for the benefit of the few impacted residents is a can of worms. The current humanitarian policy is limited to help fund only those people who meet certain criteria. I've read the entire item while excluding everybody else. Trust me, water in the basement is water in the basement, no matter how that water got there. By excluding aid, it did not enter the basement through a drain is unfair, and yet people get water in the basement through other means. If this fund is indeed for non-liable humanitarian purposes, excluding homeowners based on how the water entered the basement is just unfair. And what about those who did not receive similar assistance in the past? The city is placing its hand on the scale and picking winners and losers. I'm old enough to remember the rainstorms of 1991. When North Ogden received nearly 9 inches of rain within a 24-hour time period, causing a flood and mudslide that filled the basements of dozens of North Ogden homes. I remember how we as a community came together to assist our neighbors, clean their homes, and remove the mud and debris that filled their basements. I'm also aware of the financial burdens that those neighbors incurred from their uninsured losses. None of those homeowners were paid for the city. What do we say to these homeowners? There's a community expectation that North Ogden residents pay taxes with the expectation that our money will be used for the collective good of the city and not for the benefit of individuals who either choose to go uninsured or neglected to understand the coverage they purchased and failed to take steps to secure more coverage. Encouraging personal responsibility should be a goal of the city council. Increasing this policy from 4,000 to 10,000 actually disincentivize individuals and undermines homeowners' personal responsibility to invest in preventive measures such as insurance and property maintenance. It creates a reliance on public funds. Please consider if voting for this policy increase aligns with your commitment to responsibly manage our city's tax dollars. Please be prepared to explain why the city has a responsibility to pay $10,000 for someone who fails to personally be accountable for their own choices or neglect. By maintaining the current level, the city is being compassionate. We elected the council to make hard choices and often unpopular choices. But you have the responsibility to make decisions that are in the best interest of the city. I urge you to carefully consider these concerns I've shared with you tonight and make a decision that upholds fiscal responsibility, fiscal consistency, and fairness to all North Ogden citizens. I just want to add, my heart is broken for the Paynes. I am so sorry that they have gone through that. Nobody should ever have to go through that type of scenario. If the city is found liable, they should pay. If the city is not liable for it, unfortunately, there are circumstances that we are presented with all the times when there just is no insurance to take care of filling in those gaps, and the burden falls on our own shoulders. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you've had your time.
Hi.
So we'll move forward here.
I'll be sure to do that for you. Hi, I'm Glenda Gant. I live in North Ogden. I was here in November when my daughter presented her issue to the city council. With all respect to the man who just spoke, I myself do not have flood insurance on my $1.6 million home. Do you know why? Because I'm uphill. Any problems going down where my daughter lives in her $450,000 home. So I don't have it. I don't need it. All the pipes in my area are new because all the homes in my area are new. The pipes in her area are not new. At the end of the day, my daughter and her husband were not irresponsible. I have heard that several members of the council before this change had said that they personally do not have flood insurance in their home. My daughter, who works on a small budget from her husband with 2 children, said, you know what? Let's be extra careful. We're going to carry $10,000 damage. just in case. Just in case happened because the city of North Ogden is not maintaining their infrastructure. It's falling apart. The cement specialist my daughter spoke to said as much. That's not her problem. That was not her lackadaisical attitude. That was their very responsible attitude, and something horrible happened. Hopefully, I would think you, as a board member of the city of North Ogden, are looking at this and saying, there but by the grace of God go I. That could have been my home. I know someone came to her home and commented that it wasn't as bad as they thought. That's because they had spent $15,000 of their own savings to get it professionally cleaned, because it was knee deep in poop and tampons and any other nasty things that you flush down your toilet and probably never want to see again. My grandson, who is 4, is traumatized. He talks about poop water all the time, even at my house. He said, my house is new to mine. It's not going to get poop water in it. And it's kind of funny at first. And then after a while, you realize he's scared. He's scared of his basement. He's scared of his house. He said, told his mom his house was dying. This is their first home that they have worked so hard to make cute and nice. And the basement was just the beginning of that. And that if someone comes up here and says, because there was an act of nature, that there was a flood and landslides could anyway correlate to poor supervision of a city's pipes. There is no correlation. That's like saying, I'm overweight because I don't eat. No, I'm overweight because I eat a lot. You can't be putting blame where it doesn't belong. But I can tell you this, I am from the South. I love living in North Ogden, and I tell all my neighbors what's going on. And I tell anybody who will listen to me at my church what's going on. And they're shocked. They're shocked at the callousness that has been received from this committee. I don't know if you're a board, I don't know what the name to call you. But I can tell you, all things are not fair in North Ogden. Because the lady, well, I don't know who she was, said that her basement flooded, she got 10 grand. Y'all offered my daughter 5, her home was destroyed down there. Destroyed. They haven't been able to live in it for, it'll be a year in May. I just feel like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why all things are not fair. I don't know how you can't see the difference between a landslide and your city pipes falling apart and ruining my daughter's basement. So I'm not going to be quiet about this either. I'm not. I love this city. I had money to move anywhere I wanted to. And I chose this little city because I liked the feel of this little city. But now I have a little pain in my tummy saying it's not quite what I thought it was. Because when this happened, I said, surely, who can you blame? They are city pipes. That is what caused the damage. My daughter didn't cause the damage. A flooded toilet didn't cause the damage. City pipes did. And at the end of the day, that is the city of North Ogden's responsibility.
My name is Jennifer McDonald and I'm from North Ogden, and I was there for the 91 floods. I was there in my boots and my shovels, and I was digging people out. If you guys want to compare the 91 floods to a city responsibility flood, it's just not even the same thing. There was a massive rainstorm, the landslide came down. I also want to point out that you guys are allowing houses to be built on that landslide. So let's talk about city responsibility. The infrastructure is a problem for these sewer systems. The fact that there's more cement coming in is terrifying to me. I live right down the street. I'm downstream from this sewer problem. It can be my house next. It has financially hurt this cute young couple and their family. It would financially hurt me if this happened to me. The $10,000 limit that the insurance salesman talked about is a little bizarre, because since this happened, I have been calling for insurance prices and quotes and
what would you cover? And this is what happened to my neighbor, and what would you do? No one would cover this. This is a city responsibility because it came from the city line. It is not my responsibility to pay personally to get cement out of my sewer line in front of my home. That is the city responsibility. Infrastructure is on you. If my house had a leak or a flood or anything like that inside, that's on me, and I would take care of that. Mr. Speechley talked about asking for handouts and personal responsibility and comparing it to the floods of 91. None of this is the same thing. It does not equate at all. These guys they've come in, they've come to our community, they are helping our community, they're great members of our community, and this horrible thing happened to them. And now the rest of our street has to worry every day, like, am I next? What do you mean they found more cement in the line? Is that gonna happen to me next? When we're already financially on the brink everywhere else, the $10,000 isn't gonna be a drop in the bucket. You guys know that. You guys know construction costs, you know, repair costs. Did you know that it's over $1,000 just to rent the fans if you have a leak in your house and the dehumidifiers? That's $1,000 just to dry it up. That does not include fixing it, hauling it out, any of the repairs. We have to be logical about this, and we have to be real about what happened. We have to be real about an insurance salesman coming in here to support his son-in-law talking about everyone should get insurance. Okay, find me the one that will cover this. Find me that, send me an email. That would be great. It doesn't exist. I've worked everywhere since this happened to the Paynes. Thank you.
Anyone else like to comment this evening?
Philip Swanson, resident of North Ogden. Just want to give council a little bit of history regarding the humanitarian policy that we have in place. I was on the council in 2017, 2018 when this policy was put in place. Mrs. McIntosh already referred to the incident that caused the conversation to be had and the policy to eventually be put in place, and that was that a city water line broke. It had broken multiple times over the years, and it was a very old pipe that was eventually replaced just this last year or so. And it had broken again, and because of that break, a pretty substantial amount of water got into a couple of homes, causing, you know, $20,000-ish worth of damage. While the circumstances that needed to be met in order for city insurance to cover the damage were not met because there was no negligence. There was no waiver of immunity or anything like that on the city's part. Council at the time felt a bit of a moral obligation because a city infrastructure was known to have, we could point to the break, right? We had to dig it up, we had to fix the break. We knew that where the break was, and it was clear that it was the city line that had broken. And that break caused the flood. The difference in this 2023 incident is, although there have been multiple pieces of concrete and the analysis has demonstrated that they are from different sources, the source has not yet been identified. I know that the sewer lines in those areas have been TV'd within the recent past and found to be in perfect working order. There is no crumbling, there is no breakage, there are no separations in the joints, there are no heavages, if that's the word, pardon me if it's not. There's nothing going on with the sewer line. It's in perfect working order. How that concrete is getting in there has yet to be identified. And for me, that's when I voted against assisting the Paynes in November of last year while still on the council. That was the big difference for me, is that there is no city infrastructure that's at fault here. It isn't, we can't point to anything that the city did or didn't do. The sewer line is in perfect working order. It still is. It was before, as we know from TV footage that our Public Works group has, and that it was afterwards from TV footage that our Public Works folks have. With regard to the amount of I obviously, in the right circumstances, have no issue with the humanitarian policy. I voted in favor of it back in 2018. I also voted in favor in that, I think it was November of 2018 meeting where the amount was increased to $10,000 from $4,000. That was voted on by the council, and somehow in the paperwork that was eventually signed by then Mayor Chug, that number was not changed. So it should be 10,000. It should have been $10,000 since that time. The other issue that I think that council needs to wrestle with in this discussion is that in the two ordinances, both in 2018 and in the proposed ordinance here, there is a specific procedure to be followed for the outlay of the cash, and that is that in the event that there is a claim made, it goes to the mayor. And it goes to the public works director, who determine whether or not it qualifies for payment. It is not council's decision. Council, if the mayor then decides, yes, this is one the city ought to cover, the mayor cannot authorize the expenditure of funds. That would then come to council, and council would then approve what the mayor has already approved at that point. If the mayor, as I read the ordinances, the resolutions, if the mayor were to say this is not a covered claim, the council does not have the authority, as is currently written in the resolution, to override that and go ahead and pay it anyway, because it's been denied by the authority. Specifically in the resolution, it says that the mayor makes that decision. In his absence, the mayor pro tem makes that decision. In the absence of the mayor and the mayor pro tem, it goes to the city administrator. That was done intentionally as a council back in 2018 to relieve the council of that responsibility. I feel for the Paynes. It's a tough situation to be in. It's not a situation I would want to be in. I do know that if it were my family, and as has been expressed by some, I had the personal means to help my own children out, I would do that and then deal with the city later. But it's a tough one. This is one of those times where I don't envy being up where you're sitting anymore. I'm grateful to be down in the Pena Gallery. Thank you for your service and good luck in your discussion tonight.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone online, John, that would like to comment?
No raised hands at this point.
Anyone else this evening who has a comment would like to comment? I think your time is limited to 5 minutes. I think you had your opportunity. Is that correct, John? Or
That's the way we do it, is we give everyone 5 minutes. Yeah.
sorry,
Did she use up 5 minutes? I'm glad to hear her if she didn't, but I feel like she used her 5 minutes, right?
according to our timekeeper,
You could skip it again.
we do have public comments again. Thank you, Councilman Watson. All right. We'll move on then to item number 4. John, I would like, since you were involved in the city there and you heard council member, citizens, former council member Swanson, currently citizen Swanson. Could you give us your interpretation of how this all works? As I read through it, and you're the attorney, I'm just retired grocer. So I'm gonna rely on what you have to say here. Is that it seems like the way the ordinance is written, that either the mayor pro tem, or the public works director makes the decision to, at the time of the claim, whether this is something that falls under the humanitarian situation. The mayor then ultimately, or the mayor pro tem or whoever's available, once the decision is made that it's covered and the council allocates the money, then that process is to make sure that the city is getting, helping the citizens get a legitimate bid to restore. But the council actually has to budget the funds. The mayor then, after they're budgeted, can disperse those funds. Is that close?
Yes, that's correct. And The only difference is that there have been times in the past where the council has funded that program at the beginning of the year. And we've not had claims in our current budget. We didn't have that funded, which is why it came to the council for the request back in November.
Thank you. As I read the resolution, it says that the funds have to be budgeted before they can be dispersed. And if I heard you correctly, you're saying no funds were budgeted in the current year. The other thing is, I'm just looking for clarification. The council obviously can have this discussion. I just want to make sure this is clarified. It also said that insurance, the 10,000 limit can be or is offset by insurance proceeds. Did I read that in there?
Yeah, the idea is that if someone did have insurance that covered the entire cost, then there wouldn't be an obligation for the humanitarian aid to kick in.
Okay, that's all I needed was clarification. So with that, council, item number 4 is a discussion or action to approve resolution 03-2024, which would amend the current humanitarian policy. And I think that being the case, because it currently states 4,000, even though it was obvious the council's intention back in 2018 was 10,000, if I understand that correctly. But I think there's probably a discussion that takes place, and Councilmember Barker, if you could lead that out, because I think there's 2 issues here tonight that the council may want to address. One is, does the humanitarian policy continue on going forward in the city? Before you amend it, I guess you'd, but then determine. And then how do we deal with the situation at hand now? Probably the 2 discussions. So Councilmember Barker, did you want to lead out on this? I think you were on the council back in 2018.
Absolutely. So, in this instance, I think they actually did meet with our public works director, and Dave will let you know that right from the get-go, our city staff was involved in this cleanup. So I think they met that intent, that they did let them know that there would be a claim coming. The reason I brought this back is because as I was looking at the research, it was misrepresented online, whether that was a clerical error, I don't know, but it should have been $10,000. My question is, so 2 weeks ago, I was out of town. I was at a training with a bunch of restoration companies, and I asked multiple, on average, how much more is a sewer cleanup compared to a water cleanup? Because all we keep hearing about is water cleanups. And they told me it's 5 to 6 times more expensive to do a sewer cleanup than a water cleanup. So my recommendation or my question for the council is should there be a differential between sewer and water? Do we want to keep a $10,000 humanitarian policy, or should we maybe change? I'm of the opinion maybe we do $5,000 water and then $15,000 sewer, or even higher. But I'd like to hear what the council thinks.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Barker. Any discussion? That would be the time. Council, if you'd like to speak to the issue. I think first we speak to the issue of the policy and how it goes forward and what we do. Then we can deal with issue number 2, which is the pain situation. Council Member Fuller, do I see you wanting to speak to the issue?
I'll break the ice. This situation is very untenable. It's something that has caused a lot of issues. I think a lot of people have been confused. I know I was back in November, because I thought it was a no-fault insurance claim that we were giving out, and it wasn't actual taxpayer money, but it is taxpayer money. I think that's something that should be held sacred. In fact, we swear to the square on that for when I got sworn in for both the US and state constitutions. Taxpayer money is very sacred. So when it was given, do we have budget for it currently? And I think that's the big thing right now that I'm worried about. Being on the budget committee, this is the year number 2, and all the things that are coming down the pike. I know if it's truly something that the city has neglected, The insurance should cover it. And I'm not denying any of that. If we're culpable, then we should be paying. In this instance, if the insurance company says no, then, I'm worried that we're making a huge issue when it comes to making this humanitarian policy. Something that, to me, if you look at some of it, it says if you're insured, you don't get anything. Well, what if someone has a huge deductible? They're still covered, but yet they have a 2 or 3 or whatever grand deductible they have to pay for. Sure, it gets covered, but then it's still a ginormous amount. When push comes to shove, and this is the thing I keep thinking about every time I come to it, do I tell a widowed person that has to increase her property taxes because I have to put in the city budget 50 grand for this line item? I don't feel comfortable doing that. And so the whole policy itself, I think, needs to be either looked at or rewritten. I don't see how city funds can be used. We're going to talk about how we're going to be donating things, and that's another line item that we have to talk about. I just really worried in this budget environment that if people want to raise taxes, I'm all for it. Let's put 100 grand on there, but I don't want to do that.
Can I just clarify one thing? Sure. Please. I agree that the resolution needs some attention, that it's very ambiguous. It needs clarification. My concern is it also has in their storm sewer, which covers flooding, which I don't know how in the world the city can control that with all the grades, etc. But let me just clarify, and John, correct me if I'm wrong here. The money would come out of the enterprise fund in which the problem occurred. So in this instance, it would come out of the sewer fund, which means that it's not paid out of property taxes, but it is paid out of increasing the monthly charge. You've heard me say, you call it a tax, you call it a fee, it still comes out of somebody's wallet. But I just want to clarify that it doesn't come out of the general fund. It comes out of the enterprise fund in which the situation, occurred. Just want to clarify that.
It did come out of the 2018 budget because I looked it up and there was actually a line item that said no fault insurance, 10 grand. So
In general fund?
no non-departmental. So,
And I appreciate you clarifying the fact that it's not insurance. I was under the same impression that it was insurance, but it's really not. But John, I'm under the understanding it would come out of the fund in which caused the situation, or is it a general? I can see there was no budget this year anywhere, but where does it come out of? Just
So in the
council.
past, the payment has come out of non-departmental and then it's been reimbursed by the fund that had it.
So the answer would be yes, it comes out of the,
Correct.
okay,
Yes.
all right. Just wanted to clarify that it's not property tax. Comes out of the monthly fee that the residents pay. So anyone else have a comment? Thank you, Councilmember Fuller, for your comments. Councilmember Dalpas.
Yeah, I too wanted to throw it out there that in November, I didn't realize that this was a payment that is just straight coming from the city's coffers. I truly thought that it was and I don't know how this misunderstanding was so big, but I thought that by approving the 5,000, we were essentially saying, John, go ahead and work with them to file the claim. I thought we had an insurance policy that we would tap into. And so that's just wanted to clarify that I had a misunderstanding there for sure. I spent a lot of time over the last few weeks calling around to different cities and kind of getting a feel for how do they handle a sewer backup. And the large majority of them that I spoke with, I talked to somebody at Ogden City, so I spoke with somebody at Far West, I spoke with someone out in Roy. I have a long list I had maybe 2 more cities that I called out to try to get a feel for how they would handle it. And the lion's share of them said, we don't reimburse residents for sewer backups. There was, I would note that Ogden City, when I spoke to them, they said, we had a situation with a sewer backup that we knew was our fault. We knew it was our responsibility, and we paid for the full amount for that resident to fix their home. And so that was a clarifying difference for them, is when they absolutely knew that it was their fault, yeah, they're on board. But I just got that resounding sentiment from different cities. I feel for the situation. It's just a terrible situation to be put in. Sewer backup coverage, I just want to reiterate, is available through the correct insurance agency, wherever you want to go. There's several companies that provide that type of coverage. So if you want to, there might be a company that their policy states we have a $10,000 cap. And so when you go get a quote from them, you pay whatever it is for that $10,000 rider to go onto your policy. I have a policy through a different company that covers up to $60,000 in damage if that same thing were to happen to me. And so it's one thing that's tough about it is we're not taking comments right now. One thing that's difficult in the conversation is there are several residents in the city that are covering themselves for this very situation through their own personal insurance. And if we end up doing this sewer backup situation into the humanitarian fund and start going into the city coffers, then people won't have incentive to sign up for their own insurance policy. And every time anything goes wrong, we're gonna have people rushing to the city. And one thing I would absolutely not like to happen is every time that there's a sewer backup, people immediately come to us and we act as an insurance company and we save the day for each individual resident. That could add up quickly, and that scares me. And that's part of the reason that you purchase insurance, is because you're scared of something that might happen. I do believe in the reading of the humanitarian assistance program that it does give the mayor and the public works director wide discretion on deciding what is eligible. So I think in this situation, it's my opinion that the city has determined that it isn't their fault, or it can't be proven that it's their fault. There's nothing that clearly shows that. And so this is a situation where I would say probably wouldn't even fall under the policy. So and I just want to point out that the comparison to the Fruitland situation in 2018, it doesn't seem like an apples to apples comparison. It was something that had festered. It was a problem that we were aware of that continued to happen with the water line. And then the water line eventually, for a second and a third time, went out, and we put this policy into place back in 2018. So anyways, there's a lot going on in my mind right now. I'm going to stop there until I hear what everyone else has to say.
Can I just add a little color there? John and Councilman Barker, who was here at the time. I believe this is called no fault. Right? This is no fault. Correct?
Correct.
So it would seem like just about everything falls under the policy, unless it's neglect by the city, and then our insurance would step in. Is that correct?
Anything in a city main line, yes.
Well, I think this was our main line. So I once again, I'm just adding color here. I'm not saying yay or nay, but what I'm saying here is that this has always been referenced to me as no fault. Right? And we have nobody's claiming fault here, right? And I just want to clarify, my understanding is, and I asked this question, is we have times, date stamped on when the lines were cambered. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we also, the pipes have been relined in that area primarily, is my understanding. So they're not the old pipes, they're actually new pipes. So I'm interested to get more information on this inspection, or this company that says our lines suck, so to speak. So my question is if it's no fault,
and we've determined that it's no fault, does it qualify in the program? Because that was my understanding, what the whole purpose of it was for. Once again, John, you were here, and the second thing is, counsel, that I'm looking for here is, I believe it was said by, Citizen Swanson, that the intent, and Councilman Barker, who was on the council at the time, is that it was the intent for it to be $10,000. So if the council so feels like that this is something that's covered, I believe almost everything's covered if it's no fault, frankly. That's why I'm concerned about storm sewer being in there. Because there's no way you can control all these grades. But I just want to make sure that we don't walk away from here thinking that our infrastructure is falling apart. Well, we spent millions of dollars relining these pipes and camming them, making sure that we were doing our duty. Because that's what I'm being told here. So I think council, the situation, if you're looking for the mayor to say, under the current policy, I wasn't here to know what the intent was, but it's called no fault. And I apologize for whoever wrote it, but it's a very poorly written resolution. I mean, it's ambiguous. There's debate on whether the mayor makes this decision. I had to go to John and ask him for a legal interpretation. So I'm going to say that because of the ambiguity and it was written as no fault, and that's, nobody's claiming fault, so there must be no fault at this point in time. That it does qualify under the program. The question now being, counsel, to you, is do you agree that the intention was 10,000 and do they meet the requirements because it wasn't budgeted? I think that is the question on the table. Then we can move on. I think the second thing is this something we continue and at what amount and how do we fund it? So I'm back to that. If I could ask the question, just in the spirit, anybody can speak to this if they want, but we could go around in a lot of circles here. Do you feel that the policy, they meet the criteria of the policy other than the no fault? Of being budgeted and insurance? That's my question. Councilmember Barker.
Since the policy is already in place, I actually believe they do. What's the difference between a water line breaking and a sewer line getting clogged? Where does it all go? Downhill to the nearest place, easiest place possible.
I want to tell Glenda that she will have people over and it'll eventually run downhill.
Right. It all goes to the point of least resistance. So, and the McIntosh, Karen McIntosh said it all ran into the neighbor's house until they opened the door and then it ran into her house. Well, okay, so why aren't they going after or why isn't she going after her neighbor for opening the door? The point is, it backed up in the sewer, it ran into their home.
One was a failure, I guess.
Yeah, the failure was in the city's infrastructure.
The pipe roll was the failure.
Yeah, that one for the water line. I had one more point.
Sorry,
No, that's all right.
wait till you get my age.
I already told Councilman Pulver I've got half timers, so they're coming. I'll think about it. So,
Mayor? Councilmember, okay, go ahead, Councilmember. She had her hand up last time and I missed it, but she said, go ahead.
Okay.
First.
Yes, I have, I feel like the situation couldn't be worse and, I feel terribly that your family, the Paynes have been going through this. And, I think there must be so many miserable parts about this trial and this situation in your life. And I feel for you. I can't imagine. As far as this resolution, I have a lot of questions about the resolution. But if I understand right, you're asking first for the vote on, or not a vote, but opinion on whether or not the Paynes are eligible. I feel that my opinion in reading and studying this over and over again is that the intent of this was as the city plans in their budget, that they put aside money in case there is some circumstance like this. And then when that circumstance comes up, they're prepared for it. The way that it was written, where it says that it is required to be in the budget, and where insurance, from the resident doesn't, deny that claim, this can come in, again, when, the city feels that is applicable. And I feel that it doesn't necessarily, fit with the situation because that hasn't been previously budgeted for, this particular resolution as it is written. That's my opinion.
Yeah, if you read it specifically in the resolution, and once again, not just adding color. I believe the reason it probably wasn't budgeted is everybody had forgot about this, that it even existed. I mean, the council member Barker not remembered, I knew nothing about this. I don't think any of the council did. But if the council had agreed with this resolution and knew about it, they would have made a decision at the time of the budget, but Councilmember Watson is exactly right. If you read this in the literal sense, but I believe that it probably was an oversight in the budgeting process because nobody knew about it. Councilmember Severs.
It's just one of these difficult moments. I was new on the council at the time. I did remember that we did make a decision collectively as a council to raise it from 4,000 to 10,000. Because we wanted to make sure that we were trying to, if there were situations like this, that we could give more. I do think under the circumstances that the opinions are entitled, even though for some reason the information didn't end up what sounds like a technical error. Our intent was to be able to help when the situation demanded it. So I would probably disagree with Councilwoman Watson. I think that our intent was to have the 10,000. So I think at this point, I would still be in favor of giving them the additional 5,000 at this point. And then as Citizen Swanson pointed out, I think we follow the protocol. Point number 2 says the mayor will confirm with the Public Works that flooding originated. Do we just follow that protocol?
Well,
It sounds like.
I will tell you, I never did because I didn't hear about the flooding until sometime later, so. I mean, if you're literally looking at that. And I think that's what the council has to decide, is this a literal interpretation? Or is it a spirit of the law interpretation? Because I think I found out about this days later. I wasn't called to make a rendering opinion on it. But everybody I hear that was there rendered opinion, but nobody talked to me about it till sometime much later. So just factually speaking, I'm not saying right or wrong.
So is this then a situation where the council is making a decision? Or are we following?
This is a funding issue, so yes, this is a budget issue, so the council makes the decision. If John's interpreted this right, all's myself, the mayor pro tem, or the public works director does is determine if it's an issue that ought to be covered. Is that correct, John?
Yes, that's the way I
But
read
any
it.
money expended has to be done by the council. And according to the ordinance, has to be budgeted. Councilmember Dalpass.
So did you have enough time to?
Well, I was
Anything else?
just, the one thing I was just gonna add is, you know, and I don't disagree with the idea that something like this should be, if you look at under the category under budgeting, of course, we need to make sure that it's included. I think our assumptions were back in 2018 that it would be, and that it would be included. Like you say, there's a lot of holes in this particular document, but
if we go by the protocol, it seems like the mayor has to make the decision whether it's a humanitarian assistance project or not. And then we then, as a council, make the decision as to whether we're going to, but I will say this, we have recently made two decisions where things were not budgeted, that the decision was rendered to give donations. And that was barrels and banners. That will now go on to next year's budget. And so, I mean, if we just completely wash this under the table or whatever the phrase is, then quite honestly, we didn't do right a couple of weeks ago either.
Well, I guess I would have to ask Dave, since the mayor wasn't there, the mayor pro tem wasn't there, and the public works director was there. I guess he'd have to tell me if it qualifies or not, because I wasn't there, but from everything I'm hearing, it was quite interesting, to say the least. So may I call on him just before we continue the discussion? Dave, would you come up here, please? So Dave, you were the man on site, you're the only named party in here. Does this qualify under the assistance?
So to clarify first, I was on the phone the whole time with her, but Trent was out there.
Your guy.
Yeah, our public works, our sewer superintendent. It had breached the manhole. It had risen to the road. In my opinion, this is exactly what the no fault had, like, that's what the intention was for it, because it wasn't, it wasn't the Payne's fault at their house for this. It, going back to about the city infrastructure falling apart, we do have it lined, and so there was the concrete guy probably didn't understand, but so it's not the city's fault because, we do have lines lined, we have it TV'd, we have those kind of
So
things.
is that a yes or no, Dave?
Yes, I believe so. Yes,
Okay.
under what it was.
All I'm
intended for.
saying is I wasn't there. I'd be happy to be there in the future if ever happens, if somebody wants to call me, I'd be right there. But I wasn't there, so there's your opinion from one in the ordinance right there. Cause I wasn't there, so. Okay, Councilmember Dalmas.
How do we handle this line in the ordinance that says humanitarian assistance may be reduced if the loss is partially covered by private insurance, or in an instance where the occupants and or homeowner did not cause the problem but failed to act responsibly to minimize the loss? The first part's the main point. It sounds like that there's a wording within the policy that says, well, if they were partially covered by their private insurance, it may reduce the amount that is available to them through this policy. We were made aware that the Paynes had a rider policy for $10,000. And it's my understanding that they received a check from their insurance for that amount. So I'm not saying where we need to go with that information, but I have to lay that out there that I interpret that line that there's this potential that they were partially covered by private insurance. They obviously weren't fully covered, but they were partially covered in their loss. And so I think it's something that needs to take some consideration.
Which is interesting, right? Because that incentivizes people to have no insurance, and then they could be paid. What I'm saying is this resolution, I don't mean to offend anybody, I don't know who wrote it, but it is so ambiguous. I mean, it is just wide open for ambiguity, so. Good point, thank you, Councilmember Dalpaz. So that's a decision the council has to make. I'm open for further discussion. Looks like Councilmember Barker has a comment.
I remembered my comment. And it goes with what JD or Councilman Dalpas has to say. As we heard, the Macintoshes used their payment to pay their deductible, not to pay restoration costs. So we paid their whole deductible and they had more insurance coming back. So in that case,
Thank you for that comment.
Councilmember Dalton.
Sorry, in the policy, it talks about sanitary sewer backups. If I were aware of this ordinance way before this happened, I would have recommended that the sanitary sewer backup line in this policy doesn't exist. Just for the fact that we know homeowners have the right and opportunity to purchase their own insurance to cover themselves for that particular situation. And so I'm starting to feel more and more that there's so many holes in this ordinance. I mean, it's awkward. We found out about this ordinance as of last Thursday. That's the first that I ever heard of this resolution. And I was following along on a lot of city matters before I was elected to council, but I do not remember this one from 2018 vividly at all. And so I'm starting to feel like, you know, we might be obligated by what is put in this ordinance to pay out $10,000 from our sewer fund. But the policy itself here needs to be completely revised, because I don't think that sewer backup should have ever made its way into the wording of this one.
I don't think storm sewer should have ever been put in there.
Well, it either needs to be heavily revised or the ordinance needs to be completely taken out, because I just feel like it's wading ourselves into far too much responsibility.
And, yeah, I think the ordinance needs, really a close look at. Councilmember Watson, please.
So I realize that rewriting this is not necessarily what you're asking for at the moment, but in connection here, I was wondering if those who were here in 2018 could expound a little bit more, because if I understand what was said from Mr. Swanson earlier, it sounds like the city felt like the city was at fault at that time, where in this situation, the city feels like the city's not at fault. And so I'm wondering if that's true. I mean, obviously, the insurance didn't kick in, so that means we must have been proved to not be negligent, but it sure seems like they're negligent if they knew that the pipe was going to fail and soon in 2018. And so why wasn't the city held liable? Why didn't the insurance kick in at that point? And did the city feel like they were at fault in that situation?
Member Barker, you're the only one that's here. You're welcome. Councilmember Severing. John.
Again, this is my opinion. Water line, how often do water lines break? A lot. And usually it goes into storm drain or the gutters. On Fruitland Drive, there's no storm drain, there's no gutters, it ran downhill into a home. So it's a little bit different. We have water lines break all the time. We know we have old pipes up in a lot of places, but that just because we have old pipes doesn't mean we can replace them. We know we have old sewer lines, but we've been replacing them. We're getting to them as quick as we can. This, to me, is the same thing. We knew we have old lines on Fruitland, and I'm grateful they got replaced since, I mean, that's where I live, but it's not where I'm tied into, so someday. Yeah, it's just because the water line breaks doesn't mean you're gonna have a no fault claim.
Council, there could be a lot of discussion if we have more. I think here after we hear from Councilmember Severing, if there's no more comments, the question I'm going to ask, so you can be thinking about it. And we will start with Councilmember Pulver tonight. Come this way and then wrap around to Councilmember Barker. Or if somebody has a better idea, I just randomly did that. I'm going to ask if under the current ordinance, if the pain should be awarded an additional $5,000. That's the question I'm going to ask. Okay, so be thinking about that. Councilmember Severing, did you have another comment?
I was just gonna say that, because I was there As I mentioned earlier, I was a new city councilman. Still learning the ropes. It felt right to help somebody. As a council, we decided that perhaps we could increase it to 10,000 to be more assistance. So it was just an effort, as our duties, powers and duties books remind us, we're here to look after the health, safety and welfare of citizens. And we thought it was a way that we could make a good contribution. If you look at the humanitarian, I mean, I know we're debating about the holes in this thing, but if we take this base value, the purpose of this policy is to establish procedures under which the city may provide basic humanitarian assistance to persons whose homes are flooded as a result of backup in a city-owned and maintained sanitary stormwater line or break of water main regardless of fault. That's what the current resolution says.
Yes, and as others have pointed out, the other things literally read in there too are difficult.
So, Mayor, I don't disagree with you, but we could find whatever position we want.
Right,
We could find.
that's why I'm gonna ask the council here in just a minute. And council, let me know if I can do this. I think probably the council member that was not new at the time is with us this evening, the citizen. I would like to maybe hear from him. Is that okay? You all right? If I do that? Citizen Swanson, can you give us the council some insight? Factual insight.
The only thing I can do is repeat what I said earlier, and that is that the circumstance that initiated the writing of this policy was that a piece of city infrastructure actually malfunctioned. It was clear, we had to dig it up, we had to fix it. Yes, water lines break. We didn't know that, to Councilmember Watson's comment earlier, we didn't know where it was going to break or that it was going to break. I mean, if we knew that that spot was going to break, that would have been negligence. We knew that it was weak. We knew that it was starting to leak. We knew that it was going to break there, and we did nothing. That would have fallen under the negligence, and I believe our insurance would have kicked in at that point because the city was negligent. For me, the big difference here is that there is no failure of infrastructure with this sewer situation. The sewer pipes in that area have been relined. If you remember what that means, it means that a complete encasing of the inside of that concrete sewer pipe has been replaced by a plastic lining that gives up to 100 years of additional life. No concrete's going to fall through that. So for whoever the analyzer was that said, well, it must mean that your system is falling apart. Well, he obviously didn't look to see that, oh my gosh, these are lined sewer lines. There's no longer exposed concrete. That concrete had to have been introduced from outside somewhere. Someone introduced that concrete into the system. From the 2018, again, it was an actual failure. This instance, there is not an actual failure. And it's more than just the concrete, right? Because sewer was flowing past those concrete pieces, all four of them, for a period of time, as evidenced by the wipes and the diaper. I mean, if you all remember the photo of what was pulled out, it wasn't just concrete. There were pieces of concrete and there was a much larger mass of supposed flushable wipes. Those things are disastrous for our sewer system. Hope you all don't use those. And there was a diaper. So the backup wasn't caused by an infrastructure failure. It wasn't caused by the concrete alone. There was the introduction of foreign materials that should not be in the sewer system. It wasn't a failure of the sewer system. For me, that's the difference, why I voted the way I did in 2018, why I voted the way I did last November. Does that give you the answers you're looking for?
Yeah, with that, in the writing of the resolution, I wish it would have said, this is for no fault of the failure of the infrastructure.
Yeah, unfortunately, in these things, it's when you actually have to apply them that you realize where you could have done the language a little bit better.
So, okay, thank you for your comments. All right, council, are there any further questions? Okay. Council, member, Pulver. I'm looking, I guess, for someone, well, wait a minute, maybe I should make a motion before I ask everybody. Would someone like to make a motion to deny or pay the pains under the agreement? Councilmember Barker,
I'll make the motion that we pay the Paynes another $5,000 under the humanitarian policy.
And I said,
you have a motion and a second. Are there any further questions? Councilmember Pulver.
Where is that coming?
Well, the council is going to have to make that decision on where it will be funded. Because it is not in the budget. And so, it would either have to be looked at as adequate availability in the current budget, because you only have to make a budget amendment if you spend more than is budgeted overall in that situation, or the council would have to make a budget amendment. I guess that would have to be determined at the next meeting, once the council decides if they're gonna pay or not, because we'd have to make the determination if the money's there or a budget amendment needs to be made. That's the only.
Yeah, I just worry that we're writing checks that the departments can't cash, and I know that it's
Well,
coming out of a
find
different
out.
bucket and et cetera, but if we make a motion and say, yes, we're paying them $5,000, it's happening somehow, is what you're saying.
One way or the other, the money either has to be there, so the check will clear, or the council has to put another deposit into the bank, so to speak.
And just for clarification, last November, there was a budget for it, so they had to do it then as well.
Correct, yeah, because we were under the impression, I think the council, it was insurance, right?
Right. So I guess my point is that it's already 500 in the hole there, so we're adding another that wasn't budgeted, just so that people understand.
So in regards to the motion, I guess the motion have to include the fact that we do amend it to the 10,000 was intended.
Yep. Agreed.
Is that seconded? Is that seconded?
oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay. So the motion is that it's increased to 10,000. That the payment be made for the additional 5,000 based upon the current policy. Any further discussion? Okay, Councilmember Pulver,
No,
Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
Councilmember Dowpaz,
No.
Councilmember Watson,
No,
Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Motion fails on a 3-2 vote. Okay. Let me just ask council in regards to the resolution itself. A motion included the moving it to the intended limit, 10,000. My understanding is the council is willing to consider continuing this program, but with a thorough review of the current resolution to refine some of these issues that have been addressed this evening. Is that correct?
Can I make a question?
You bet.
Why are we gonna keep going if we're not gonna pay it?
Well, my understanding is, and correct me, council, if wrong, is the reason that it's not being paid because it wasn't budgeted this year. Is that correct?
So another question?
I'll clarify my vote. That will help you understand.
I'm just trying to understand.
My vote was tied to this verbiage that says that the assistance may be reduced if the loss is partially covered by private insurance. My interpretation is that it was partially covered by their rider on their policy.
Councilmember Barker, did you have another comment?
Can they come back in July when we budget this?
Well, I think the council would have to decide whether they want to continue this, so because the budgeting process is going on right now.
Right.
So if the council doesn't want to continue it or address the issue, then there's no use of. What do you mean?
would it be a new claim or the same claim? Because it goes through the insurance company, right?
No, it does not go. This is That's the misunderstanding, I think. The insurance company doesn't pay any money.
No, it's screening.
No.
And keep it.
They've already denied the claim and then they paid out the 5,000 because they thought that was the amount the city was gonna give them. But we'll give them the things have 10,000. So the claim is actually, in my opinion, closed based upon the vote this evening.
So I don't know if I'm the lone person here, but I don't want to continue this policy as it is stated. I want, number one, sanitary sewer backup. I want that line taken out of the policy if it's to be considered again. So I'm just telling the council that, so they know that that's the way that I'm thinking moving forward. I think there was a reason and an intention to why this ordinance was written. I don't deny that, and I think we have different opinions on how it was supposed to be interpreted, but based off of, I just worry that we're gonna be strapping our city to the obligation of cleaning things up that aren't proven to be our fault. And to what Resident Swanson was mentioning, we have had those lines redone in the last few years. There's nothing that shows that there's a problem in the area. And it's just foreign objects that were introduced that we can't prove where they came from.
Go down the line. We'll start with Councilmember Severing, then we'll go to Councilmember Polar and Councilmember Barker.
Well, I'm just thinking, Mayor, that I feel like Councilman Dalpaz, I spent some time searching a lot of cities' websites. And I can't find anything even close to this. In Harrisville, Ogden City, Pleasant View. And I think that there's probably, I don't know if we're gonna make this so clear that it couldn't be left to perception. So in my mind, we just eliminate the entire resolution, the humanitarian assistance policy.
Okay. Councilmember Polar. I'm sure staff would appreciate some direction, but they don't wanna waste their time amending a resolution if the council's not interested.
Yeah, the same book that Councilman Cerny was talking about is the same thing. It says, if there's an emergency, earthquake, flood, they have to come to council to get excess funds. It's not, if it's not budgeted, then you have to go and get an amendment. So the point is that I'm not trying to be callous. And this is something that happens to everybody. And I know there's a lot of people that had flooding and it was all hands on deck. A lot of organizations do this for a living. Donation wise, they do it because they want to do it. It's not something that the city or any government should be involved in. If you can say that the city's culpable or liable for something, I'm all in. Let's pay it. But if you can't, and it's a lawyer thing, I can't by due faith give other citizens tax paying, their hard-earned money away to other people, and that's I agree. This type of resolution is a slippery slope, and it leads to that, and I don't want to be part of that.
Okay, well, Councilmember Barker, still have a comment after 3 council members.
No, if we're not gonna pay an ordinance resolution that we already have, then we might as well get rid of it.
Okay, Councilmember Watson, did you have any comments?
I feel like, if for some reason the city felt like they were at fault, even though the insurance said the city was not liable, then that would be, the only reason that I would feel like I could support this type of resolution if the city truly felt like the city was at fault, but that hadn't been proven. But that is something that is really hard to prove, and it's something that you can't predict every case and word it in a resolution so that it's simple. And I wrote down the same word in my notes, is that I worry that there'd be an obligation for us to give that maximum amount in any no fault circumstance when maybe the city didn't feel like they were at fault. So I think it would be hard to maintain this type of resolution.
Okay, well, I think
the consensus is then this, there's no need to rewrite this resolution or look at it in depth. I've heard several reasons, all in the current resolution or ordinance.
Do we need to officially rescind the resolution by motion?
Yes, we will.
Okay,
Just-
sorry to interrupt you.
in just a moment, but I do want to point out that I heard from the council various reasons why this was not paid. The overbearing reason seems to be after this discussion that the city shouldn't even be involved in this humanitarian effort. Let them say, you know, it wasn't budgeted. I heard someone mention, well, there's been two things that haven't been budgeted that have been amended. Just so you know, and I'm sure you knew this, it could be amended. But I heard other reasons why it wasn't paid, so let's move on. We need then a motion to, John, what is the resolution that will be rescinding? We've got 03-2024 here. What's the original one we're rescinding?
07-2018.
07-2018.
Yep.
Council, I'm looking for a motion to rescind resolution 07-2018. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we rescind resolution 07-2018.
I have a motion to rescind resolution 07-2018. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Watson. Is there any further discussion on that issue? Since this is the decision of a resolution, we'll start with a vote. Councilmember Holber,
Yes.
Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
Councilmember Dowpaz.
Yes.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker.
No.
Okay, passes on a 4-1 vote to rescind that resolution. We'll go on to item number 5. Council, unless you're willing to take a 5-minute break.
Move to take a 5-minute break.
We have a motion and a second. Any objections to that motion to take a 5-minute break? Okay, take a 5-minute break.
Go.
to item number 5. This will be led by our city manager and attorney, John Call. This is a discussion or action to approve a franchise agreement, A3-2024. Mr. Call, please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. So this, red line version of the agreement is based on the standard franchise agreement that we have done with the past, telecommunication individuals and Powers, Questar, as well as, I feel like there's a third one. Anyways, it's typically those type of folks, the people who are installing physical infrastructure in our roads, easements, and other areas that the city has rights to. In that interaction with CenturyLink, they had some suggestions on ways that they would suggest that the ordinance or the resolution be changed, the agreement be changed. And most of them were pretty benign and generic. A few of the things they objected to in the language were things that actually were in their favor. And so I talked them out of it. And one of the things, for example, is we had a provision in here that says, hey, if we give another group a different deal than we've given you, then you get the same deal. Like that's written into the agreement, is that all franchise groups will be treated the same. So I just wanted to highlight the ones that I think are stuff that I wouldn't want to include in the upcoming or in our agreements. And there's not really a lot of them, because a lot of them are just cleanups, you know. This is a good example where it's just lawfully enacted taxes shall in no event exceed the amount payable to the Municipal Telecommunications Licensee Tax Act. So it just means we can't do something that exceeds what the state tells us we can do anyway. So this is the type of non-offensive language. The ones that I felt like maybe there was some question about are a little further down on the agreement. Let's see. Oh shoot. It was there was some stuff dealing with breach that I didn't particularly love. That the idea was that they were trying to amend the time frame right here, when not timely cured, consistent with section 1B above, shall constitute a material breach of this agreement. And we had put that, hey, you get 60 days after written notice to follow, and then we reference the same section, which is this 7B up here. And it's not something that's that dramatic. I think most of the things they really want changed, we got them out of it. But if the council wants to push back and say, no, we really want to do the language that we had in the original for those sections, we can. And then the other one, this underground installation, they hadn't liked this language, and so we tweaked this, and I want to make sure this is a section the council is okay with. This one in particular, most stuff we want it to be underground, obviously gas lines and things that the safety and fire marshal folks require it to be underground, so it can't be struck. But they pushed back a little bit and said, well, all our stuff isn't underground. And so we talked a little bit about if they're undergrounding, meaning we don't want new power poles and new utility poles installed, but the idea might be that they could extend a little ways if they had a power pole or a utility pole within a couple 100 feet. And so let's see, it was written, let's see. Must be down a little further. But the idea being that really we want things underground. That's the new standard. It's better for the lines, better for the city. And so that was kind of the intent of that language. And then I just wanted to make sure the council was still okay pushing that, because I don't think that we really want more power poles. And then a provision that they had an issue with, but they've agreed to, is actually one of our standard provisions that say, hey, it's not just right of ways, it's not just streets, but it's also the areas of the city that city owns property. You know, so if we own a park and we need something moved because we're doing something in a park, that they would also have to pay for that relocation. Sorry, that was confusing.
How about a public safety bill and relocation?
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that it would cover, is that if the city's doing a city project and it requires a telecommunication line or a power line or a gas line to be moved, then they should cover it as part of the cost. That's not written into our Rocky Mountain Power franchise agreement, for example. So when we built the public safety building, we spent $40,000 or $50,000 moving the power infrastructure.
John, didn't they charge us $15,000 to move their line?
And CenturyLink did charge us $15,000 to move their line. And there's some issues with that because technically they weren't in an easement. From what we could find, it was just a line that was following, it was a what they call a hostage or it's essentially a line that they went underneath the power line because there was a power line there. And there wasn't actually even an easement for the power line.
So why did we pay the $15,000? Simply because we had to get it moved and move on with the building?
Yep, for timing purposes, we couldn't delay it any longer because they needed to get the foundation finished. So, and I had expected one of their representatives to be participating in this meeting and they are not online. So I think it'd be fine if the council's not ready to approve this agreement and would like to talk about it with the representative, we could push this off to another meeting.
Well, John, and I think I heard you say that you feel we have an obligation to have the same agreement with all franchise. So why are we changing this if we don't have this with, what's the other cable company? Comcast, or why,
Yeah.
why are we gonna have to amend our agreements with all of our franchisees to make sure that we have the same deal?
So the way that the agreement is written, the other every franchisee was technically qualified for this agreement. So any amendment we make here
That's my
applies to all of them.
That's
If it's favorable, I guess is probably the way to say it.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm just still offended by the fact that they were not in an easement. They're charging us $15,000, not that should bear on the decision, but I want to make it clear, I'm offended that they charged us $15,000 when they didn't have a franchise agreement and they didn't have an easement.
Yeah. As far as we can tell, CenturyLink, which was Questar, their franchise agreement expired in the early 2000s. They have continued to pay franchise fees without a franchise agreement, so that's been beneficial. Other than it's really not them that's paying the fee. All of you on your cable bill, you pay the franchise tax and then the city gets it directed to them. So, like I said, I was expecting one of the representatives to be here and or at least online, and
Let me ask the council what they'd like to do. You want to postpone addressing this issue? Or do you want to go ahead this evening? We have a motion.
I just have a question. So you can tell who's on Zoom as well as, I'm sorry, you can tell who's on YouTube as well as who's on Zoom?
I can't tell who's on YouTube.
So it's a plus.
They could be listening,
But they wouldn't be able.
right? Yeah.
Mayor, I move that we postpone this franchise agreement discussion until a later date for the purpose that CenturyLink, aka Loom now, I think it is, so they can have a conversation with us.
Okay, thank you, council member. Now, Paz, do we have a second to that motion?
Second that.
Second by council member Severing. Is there any further discussion on that issue? Since we're postponing this, we're not addressing the resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Item number 5 is postponed to a future meeting. Let's go on to item number 6. This will be this discussion by our Community and Economic Development Director, Mr. Scott Hess. He's going to give us a brief discussion on the acquisition of Weaver County surplus parcel up in I think it's the northeast portion of our city.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we have a property that Weaver County is in the process right now of declaring a surplus and have had conversations with the city about turning into a park. So John has the parcel pulled up here. It's 16-049-00130. It's just over 4 acres. It's a hillside parcel that's north and west of Mason Cove subdivision and adjacent to a piece of property that the city owns, just to the south. We own that little square there. The city, as of right now, doesn't have any access to that parcel other than through a utility easement on lot 3458, on the little down that one right there. There's a utility easement on the right side that would be a public utility easement. That subdivision of those homes along Mountain Road was developed in 87. That's when the approval is, the dedication plat. The property itself was turned over to Weber County on unpaid back taxes of just over $12,000, $12,257.96. The county would like to contribute the parcel to the city essentially for that cost. That's significantly lower than what assessed value on 4 acres in North Ogden on the hillside would be. But there are stipulations with the purchase of the property. So if you've read the agreement, down in item number 9, the conditions of conveyance. Should the city determine to purchase the property, we have to turn this into a city park, including restroom facilities, a drinking fountain, and open it to public use within 5 years of the date after we've executed the deed. No real other further stipulations on what that park would look like. So it could potentially look like Lakeview Park, which is a more natural park. It's not a programmable park space with grass and benches and walking trails and all of that, and would really be held as hillside mountain access as the subdivisions west of Mason Cove, or the property west of Mason Cove, begins to develop out in the future. So I know that, staff knows that we can't obligate a future council to spend monies. So buying this for just over $12,000 does obligate you to spend capital facility dollars to construct a restroom and drinking fountain, but that would have to be budgeted in the future. And if that doesn't happen within 5 years, the fund or the property would revert back to the county. We wouldn't get our money back. Essentially, it would just revert back for failure to execute the contract. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and discuss with you. I think, from staff's perspective, we're generally underparked in this area on the northeast side of the city. Same problem exists kind of in the southeast side of the city, but that doesn't mean that we, should have to purchase it if it's not something that you don't see as a benefit to the city, but staff does believe this would be a benefit to the public.
Scott, could you clarify what our access long-term would be if it's going to be parked?
We have a future road right of way up to a water tank there to the east. So we would have to purchase or obtain an easement or some other access across a private property owner's property to get out of Mason Cove and to the west. The other option is to contact these property owners along Mountain Road and turn one of the public utility easements. We have several public utility easements in that subdivision. Potentially turn one into maybe a pedestrian access, but the park as it is right now, there's a pretty decent flat spot as you are further north. But it's obviously very hilly, the rest of it. So you wouldn't put parking on it. You wouldn't, put a whole lot of programmable park space up there. It would really be a natural mountain access.
I guess the 5-year timeframe is what's a little bit surprising to me. I didn't know that was one of the county's conditions. I knew that was a condition for a park in the initial discussions, but what questions do you have for Mr. Hess? Councilmember Pulver?
So it's 5 years of non-wiggle room type of thing.
As far as this agreement goes, and we could send this back to the county and ask about the timing on that. What the council would be doing tonight is authorizing the mayor to execute the property purchase in the future after the county has issued this as surplus. So we do have a little bit of time on this one. We could go back if you have a suggestion for staff on what we'd like to suggest. And then the other is the park has to remain an open city park for at least 20 years. So I think long-term, past 20 years, the city determined that this would be better off to be developed, sold to a developer, whatever. Post 20 years, you could do that, but for the most part, the city is a patient landowner, so we wouldn't sell.
You said hilly, and I was kind of trying to get up there and hadn't been able to do it. Is it? Cause a lot of people talking.
It's hilly,
It's hilly.
like that.
Like, I don't. maybe-
So the usable space is that small portion on the top.
So
of
not,
the
not,
parcel.
not a dog park is what you're saying.
No, it's a good spot to roll a ball down a hill. Mason Cove has some houses that are,
Yeah, that's what
ramblers
I'm
on
trying
the
to-
front and like 4 stories on the back, so it's hilly.
Councilmember Watson?
So Lakeview, you said it was similar to, if I remember that correctly, that one only has pedestrian access as well, right? And it's not an HOA land, it's a public park.
Yeah, yep, it's crossed by the canal.
Huh.
And there is a restroom facility there that's accessible, but it's just a natural rolling hillside park.
Mhm.
That's,
Yeah, I've been there, there's a gazebo and a lot of trees, yeah, it's really quaint.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Mr. Hess? I guess the council could approve the execution if they're concerned about the time frame, if that is renegotiated. I think we ought to at least try.
Sure.
But, so council, any further questions before I seek a motion on allowing the mayor to execute a purchase agreement on this property if the time is extended? And if so, what time would you like us to seek? Looking for a motion. Councilmember Watson.
Am I allowed to make a motion that we go ahead with it, even if they're not willing to do the extend the 5 years?
You can make a motion to whatever you'd like
Yeah,
to do.
I make a motion that we go ahead and try to purchase this property, asking them if they could extend the 5 years, but if they aren't willing, that we go ahead with it regardless.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Maybe. Well, I have a question that would, how much usable space is there? Cause it's 4 acres. Is it an acre of usable space? Is it an acre and a half? Cause that's a big part of the decision. If there's an acre or more in my mind, it may be just enough to do a little dog park or something. Like everyone's asking for.
Mhm.
What's the usable space?
I haven't been up there to survey exactly how much usable space there is, so. Since this has not been on our capital facilities plan, there's not a whole lot of planning that's been done around it, so what we would likely do is. We can certainly go up and try to walk it now, see how the, snow and coverage and everything is. But I think what would happen is we would probably allocate some time and resources to figuring out what this park would be. Is it gonna have trails? Is it, something to go out and recreate on, or is it more of you build a gazebo and it's like a nice hillside viewpoint or something like that? But that's a good question. I don't know.
So Mayor,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna mention that it's not too far from Mountain View. I mean, it is, like you said, there aren't that many parks around there, so I mean, it would be nice, but if it's not really usable, I mean, I don't say we're wasting money, but it's not. The city has to maintain it, it has to, all this other stuff, and I don't know if it's gonna be worth it, but yeah. And where's the money coming from?
Mayor, I was just gonna say, we ought to probably include some due diligence time. Not just a negotiation for the fee simple determinable for 10 years, but I think we ought to maybe do some due diligence about how easy it's gonna be to create a park there.
Yeah, I think the counties approached this about a year ago on this, didn't they?
Yeah, it's been a while, yeah.
Well, it sounds like we better find out how usable it is. Councilmember Barker?
Is there a real benefit for the city owning this compared to the county? If it's just a open rolling hill park?
I think that, it's that property will eventually develop. Mason Cove developed, and for the back taxes, this will go on to surplus sale and somebody could pay 20 times the cost of those back taxes and still have a steal for 4,000 or 4 acres on North Ogden's hillside. I mean, there's a lot in this area. A 1/4 acre lot is $250,000 after development for that 1/4 acre. So it's up to you. It depends on, it depends on the council and what you'd like to do. We can certainly go out and I think the idea of having some due diligence time, and they haven't been in a real rush to get this set up on the surplus for us. They talked to us about a year ago and we've been waiting for the county to come back on it. So we could ask them for 60 days, give us a little bit of a weather break and see if we can determine how we're going to do it, especially since it's a semi-landlocked piece of property and it's going to require other access in order to make it usable to the public. So I think that's
Do they have
totally
a
reasonable.
tax sale date yet?
No, they have to determine.
They already own it, don't they?
Yeah,
They
they own
already
it.
taken that.
So what their process is they would determine it as surplus, and then once it's surplus, there's either path forward this interlocal agreement to sell it to another jurisdiction or municipality, or it would end up on whatever the next tax sale would be.
I don't think the county will do anything with it, but sell it to someone else. Councilmember Barker is my understanding. But that's what would take place and, the county is after us consistently to get all these islands out of we have more islands of county property in the city than any other place in the county.
I think Roy has more,
I don't think so.
unless they've cleared up a lot, but.
They have. Okay, I think we have a motion and a second. Did we get a second?
Was it maybe?
No second.
You just recommend, I just recommended that we include some due diligence time in that process.
Okay, so, we do have a motion on the, Councilmember Watson's motion is still on the table.
Does Blake want to make a stab at amending it or,
Yeah, I'd be happy to amend my motion to include the
due diligence period?
time.
Okay, she's amended her motion. Do we have a second now?
and the due diligence timeframe is what?
I would say at least 60 days,
And that's,
maybe even 90, just because we don't know what the weather is going to look like in the next. So would it come back, or are you saying 60 days? I would just add that to Councilman Watson's amendment or motion.
So what is the motion?
The motion is to allow the mayor to execute a purchase agreement based upon the due diligence period and trying to negotiate the timeframe on which to build a park, is my understanding.
But were they gonna go out and look to see if it's even worth it?
that's part of the due
Okay,
diligence.
so if they decide, what's the decision making to say, yes, it's good for a park?
I think
Just
staff will bring you back a
Okay.
recommendation.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
We have a second to the motion.
Second,
Okay, we have a second. Any further discussion? Councilmember Barker.
The only part of this motion I don't like is tying us to a restroom. I would prefer if we had wording that said we'll put in the restroom when there's access there. Because there's two access roads, but neither one are there.
Okay, we do have a motion on the table now. I don't know if the motioner is willing to amend their motion to exclude that. If not, then I'll have to take a vote on the current motion. Are you willing to amend that motion?
I feel like the due diligence gives us the wiggle room, so we can determine, staff can give us a recommendation, they can look in and they can say, hey, this is gonna cost us $200,000 to put the infrastructure in to do a bathroom, and we might be like, okay, well, it's off the table, So I don't feel like we need it in the, just because of that.
Okay, well, we do have a motion and a second on the table. Is there anyone else that'd like to comment before I seek a vote on this? Okay. Do we still need to do a roll call vote since we're not actually approving the agreement, John?
I think the way it's written, it would, because the motion was essentially that you could execute it if everything's favorable.
Okay, let's start with you, Councilmember Pulver, on a roll call vote.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Severie?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalpat?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
And Councilmember Barker?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Scott. We'll now go on to, I believe, item number 7. And Councilmember Dalpaz is going to give us a little insight on the development of the chicken coop fuel, Barker Park.
Thank you, Mayor. So as some of you might know, I was asked to be the chairman of the Barker Park Committee, and part of our deliberation over the past few months has been to get to the point where we could start to work towards phased approach of getting the park completed. And so as a committee, we discussed last time that the island portion that's to the east of this is going to require a lot more work than this chicken coop area. So the thought was, why don't we start on the chicken coop section of the program, of the project? And it will be a lot easier to digest than the island portion. And so I told the committee that I would bring it to the council for approval. One thing that is slightly unclear, I know that Grant Protzman has been very passionate about the idea of getting donors to help with the, I don't know if it's gonna be road base for now or asphalt. John, do you remember if he specifically?
Asphalt, yeah.
Okay, so the parking that's there on the south side of this will be asphalt, and he was under the impression that he could get donations for that service to be done. And then I believe the trail that's highlighted in yellow is, well, actually, we're calling it a pathway because pathways are not technically required to be ADA, I believe is what Grant was telling me. But the yellow section is going to be probably like a road base type of solution. So it would be a little pathway of road base that goes around that area. And then where it says 14 there at the top is where the old chicken coops used to be. And there's going to be an educational component to what they used to do in that area. And then the orchard to the west there is basically the revival of an orchard that used to exist in that section. So what I'm bringing this for is to the council for is an approval of this concept. And what's difficult right now to say for sure is what the city costs will be. I just have to be transparent. I know that Grant has passionately brought to us and suggested that he can get all donations for this entire park. He feels confident, but I also worry, not to be overly pessimistic, I worry that we might be obligating ourselves to rather large expenses to start to get this completed. So let's start the conversation here, and then I continue to meet with the committee, and I'm going to take the feedback that the council has given here as to how we should handle next steps.
Thank you, Councilmember Delpaz. I'm of the opinion that at some point in time, the city needs to do something with Barker Park. Let me just point out, in the event that this began, we would need to amend the current agreement that we have. Because, John, I believe it says once development of the park begins, then the farming of the property stops. And I don't think we want that to turn into a weed infested area. And I think, Councilmember Delpaz, to your point, this is all based upon no commitment of finances for the city. So if the concept is approved, it's based upon the fact that Grant has to get donations, because if it's going to incur funds, the city would have to budget for that in the upcoming year. So my understanding is this is all based upon the fact the city expends no funds. Councilmember Pulver.
I agree on the funds issue. I think one of the things that they've always asked for, and Blake, you can correct me, is using trucks or other stuff from Public Works. I think that's been asked for about excavation or something like that, and I don't know if that's still part of the plan, but that would be on the table too, I think, if we want to talk about it.
Well, it is a city park, right? So utilization of city equipment would be probably appropriate.
We have used city equipment on the cleanups before where they parked it there, we put the weeds in there and then dump it for us.
And this is probably a good time. I don't know how many of you saw the pictures from Rod Barker on the danger there in the park for children. That probably ought to be addressed. Also, since we're starting this, but anyway, Councilmember Delpaz, just so I understand what you're seeking is a conceptual approval to begin this process with no expenditures no monetary expenditures by the city. Is that correct?
That's correct, but with the caveat that I believe this will be, I just kind of believe at some point this may come back for, you know, next year's budget or 2 years down the road budget, that we have 50,000, 100,000, whatever it costs to start to do this. But yes, I would agree that this is to approve this concept map and to approve this as the plan of what we want to be done, with the thought that there will be zero city funds expended to it for now. And we'll work hard towards it and see if we can get it there. And
Well, I've always believed in the long-term planning. The city needs to make a decision what they're gonna do with that ground. It's been sitting there for 20 years.
there,
Probably our primary park for the city.
there is one slight difficulty for some of the equipment that they use to farm that field. That's usually right where they start to go up, right about where between B and C are. And there would need to be a plan in place to, John, how did you explain it? It's basically like a conduit or something that the tractor would have to drive over. So that's a little bit of a complication to the logistics of them continuing to farm it. I agree that they need to continue to farm it, or else it's not going to look pleasing to everyone in the city. So as long as the Barker family is amenable to that, so that might be something we need to address with them.
Okay. Any questions? And Councilmember Barker, let me just ask, I know it's your family that's farming that. Would you like to abstain from the vote this evening, or you want to participate?
Yeah, I'll abstain.
So, I mean, you know, you can vote.
No,
if you'd
I'll,
like.
that's why I didn't call it out in conflict of interest. I didn't know what we were talking about.
Okay. All right. Is there any questions for Councilmember Delpaz? Councilmember Barker?
Previous years, I used to have this same job. We were told, or we discussed that all these plans need to be civilly engineered. Is that still the case? So if this is a concept, we're still gonna go out to engineering?
Yes, and I fully expect that city staff would be participating in the engineering of it. So I guess technically there are funds being dispersed towards this project in a sense of using our staff to engineer the plans.
It's not incremental funding. We have the
Yeah.
staff in place. so
Exactly.
it's, you know, it is our park and
Yeah.
and we do have staff in place. It's not gonna incrementally result in expenditures of the city. I do believe, the motion ought to include the fact that the agreement will be amended, that the ground can still be farmed. So it doesn't turn into weeds and, that we need to work out a way to, access it so it doesn't turn into weeds. So any other questions for Councilmember Barker, Councilmember Watson?
I just have a comment. I think that my opinion is just as we have a plan, our future plan to take care of all the parks in the city one at a time throughout the next decade or so. I imagine that this would be no different and that the city would eventually put in money to maintain and preserve the land that they have and that they own. And so for someone to come in with donations and service hours, I think that it would be appropriate to encourage that to save ourselves costs down the road. And if the costs do come down the road, I don't think that we should be surprised or upset, because eventually that's something that I believe that we should do as a city anyway. So I fully support this plan.
Okay, any other comments? Councilmember Delpez, you want to make a motion or you want to comment?
Just one more comment, I can make a motion. To Councilwoman Watson's comment, the island section that's to the east, which is going to have a little alcove and is gonna have a little bit of a pavilion, well, this rendering right here, other than the parking, that needs to be fixed on there, that we'll actually have to have a parking lot in there. But that section, there's absolutely no way that we could do, that whole project from donations. It would just be impossible. So that would be a situation where it's almost like, the playground replacement that we have on an annual basis, we would have to put that into a line item in future years. So just, I'll do the motion.
Your motion.
I move that we approve the chicken coop site plan as it is on the concept. For the Barker Park Committee and Barker Park Trail Foundation to get completed. Yeah.
Did you want to amend, put in there that we need to amend the agreement to continue the farming?
Yeah, with the addition that we amend the agreement between the Barker family that continues to allow all of the farming to take place throughout this process.
Did you want to also add that it doesn't take any money from the city?
Thank you. This one's difficult. I would also like to add that as of right now, there are no city funds that are budgeted towards this project. It will all come through donations.
Okay, we have a second to that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I'm informed that we should do just a voice vote on this. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to the most exciting part of tonight. John is going to talk to us about city code chapters 5 and 8. 5 through 8. He's going to identify for us the concerns or any substantial things that need to be addressed by the city, along with any comments from those of you who have had a chance to review this. John?
Thank you, Mayor. So it is about 100 pages of code. Most of the sections and changes are pretty minor things. There are 6 things that I've outlined in the staff report that we can talk about. And essentially are things that were either suggested by the consultant that was helping us or staff. There are a few things that have come up. Councilmember Polder, for example, sent some questions and thoughts about these code sections. But the first one is 561 talks about penalizing people for polluting waters. Technically the state covers all of that now. And so they prosecute the crimes, they do all that. And so there's not a need for it. We can technically leave it in if we'd like to, but if the council's amenable, we just assume take it out and let it fall in the state statute. Our officers still can enforce the state statute because it's still a crime. So they would just be citing the state code instead of the city code in that situation. And then 611 is an extra kind of definition section. And so we just want to be eliminating the definitions and relying instead on the state definitions for the purposes of the council needs. 6.2a is an interesting section. I was trying to do I was doing some research on it, and Ogden City has this in their code. What it is it's a separate act or addendum in our code that says, hey, we don't allow for housing discrimination in our city. Most cities do not have this code. And my understanding is the North Ogden City Code is a adoption of the Ogden City Code with tweaks, or that's what it was based on. So I think that's the reason that both us and Ogden City have this in their code. The difference is that the Ogden City Code has stayed on top of it and kept it up to date. Most cities just rely on the state process, which is actually very similar to the process outlined in our code, where those who feel like they've been discriminated against apply and appeal the decisions or bring it up to basically a fair housing authority at the state level, who then looks at it and prosecutes landlords or others who are found to be discriminating. In our section of the code, all the discrimination appeals would come to the council. And so because of that, I think it would be a good idea for it to just rely on the state process It would take a tremendous amount of time. And I think that those who are discriminated against would have better resources at the state level, because there are individuals who that's all they do, and they would be able to better help them with the resources the state has and the education opportunities for both landlords and others. The next section, 813, is just fixing some definitions, just tweaking how they are, and then eliminating a few that aren't actually used in the code. So it'll define a code and then it's never used, and so we like to eliminate those. 8-2-2, it says change to Public Works, and in that section, routinely it was calling on the building official to be the person in charge of the Public Works infrastructure. And that was back because we used to not have a Public Works inspection department. And so with the changes, we've changed it, or recommending a change to reference the Public Works, and in particular the city engineer, in cases where you need a specific individual to make a judgment call as the appropriate oversight committee. And then 845, this is the exciting one, if there is such a thing. This goes to that conversation about should you have rules if you're not going to enforce them. I'm going to pull it and put it up on the screen for the council to look at. And we don't have to talk about it tonight, obviously, because this is not being adopted tonight. But the question is going to be, how would the city like us to be overseeing trees in the city? So this is the city authority dealing with the state forester, or the city forester. How would the council like to talk about trees and enforcement of trees in park strips and on property? So, like I said, I know it's, typically we don't like to go past 9, so it might be something you can just think about, or I'm happy to write down any notes you have right now.
Well, I'm one for the, first council's choice here, but I'm one that, the less ordinances, the better, particularly those that don't have a real meaning to our residents, in regards to safety and protection. I'm a little confused how trees do that. I mean, what are our cats gonna climb? Councilmember Barker?
Just about the city forester, maybe Dave can correct me. I thought we have to have a city forester in order to become a Tree City USA or whatever it's called with Arbor Day.
We need a tree board.
Oh, a tree board.
Yeah.
That's John right now.
Okay, so we don't need a forester. And okay.
Any other questions? Councilmember Pulver, did your questions get addressed? Did you send them?
They're a long list. I don't want to go through them all, but the one that is sort of associated with what we were just talking about is, are we doing the tree board? I guess, because that was one thing. I mean, is that something that is, it says Public Works Director, so I mean, is that something that we need as well? And that was another interesting thing. You said Arbor Day.
So we do have, one of our employees is right on the cusp of being a certified arborist. And the plan is, as they get that certification, to have them, in fact, we were considering taking they would basically have a tree board made up of Public Works employees.
Yeah, because I know there was one thing in there, someplace in there, I can't remember which word is now, that you had to get approval for which trees went in the park strip. And I was like, what? So I didn't even know that, so. I don't know, that needs to be either enforced or taken out, or, there's a whole bunch of tree stuff in there that. Obviously, when it's over a roadway, there's a certain height, and I think that's already in there as a provision, but everything else.
Well, it's interesting because I'm not aware of anyone that gets a landscape plan residential that the developer checks with the city to see if the trees he puts in are approved trees. So I don't think it's going to be something that's forcible, so to speak. Okay, John, what else do you have?
That was the last item on the staff report of the 6 major amendments to these pages.
Chris, can you, forward your comments to the rest of the council? And
Didn't I?
so they have a
I did.
chance to.
They're in our email.
And the other, to me, the other big one is about the amphitheaters, making sure that we put some provision in there that avoids the Dodger Stadium issue, you know. I'm gonna say more than that, what happened at Dodger Stadium with.
Falling off of it?
No, just the people that were approved to go there and basically everybody came unglued and I just don't want that issue in our environment.
Yeah, that's an issue I've been talking with John about for some time on, city-sponsored events and what that opens us up to in the future. So we are having discussions about that. They bring that back to the council. Once that's the case. Okay, John, anything else you need from the council?
Nope.
All right. Let's move on then to the, council department reports before we go on to public comments. Let's start with you, Councilmember Dalpas.
Yes, I got a great comprehensive update from Chief Quinney on what's going on. Let me just gather that real quick. As many of you know, the public safety building has officially opened and we had an open house late last month to get that going. And so it was really exciting to do that. I was there for, I think about 3 hours. I think most of the counselors were there for at least a couple hours, if not more. And the time I was there from 2 to 5-ish, it was very busy with people flowing through and seeing what we have going on. And so it was really just an exciting thing to be a part of. All the officers looked especially happy to be in their new digs. It was awesome. Also, the demolition of the old building will be happening within the next few weeks. So just be aware that that's going to be happening and there will be some office closures during that time for the safety of residents and employees. So just be aware that there might be a slight interruption, but you won't have any problems reaching out to non-emergency or 911 if you need assistance. On April 27th at between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. there will be a drug take-back event at Smith's. And so that's a great opportunity to bring in your expired or unused medications and properly dispose of them. That's the best way to make sure that they're taken care of right. And then a note that parking restrictions for winter is ending on March 15th here in 3 days. So big shout out from the police department. They wanted to shout out our snowplow drivers for keeping our roads cleared throughout the winter. And then last but not least, with warmer weather and longer days, there's more pedestrians, joggers, and motorcycles, cyclists, all that good stuff. Please just take extra care and caution that there's going to be people out and about. With the daylight savings change as well, people are going to work sometimes in the dark. And so just be extra careful when you're out and about.
Thank you, Councilmember Dalpas. May I add something that I think is really important?
Yes.
Regarding the police. As you know, we are searching for a new chief. Councilmember Dalpas and myself, John and the chief met earlier today to outline the attributes that we should be seeking in a chief. We will ultimately be appointing a kind of a review board, for lack of a better term. To narrow that down, of course, any decision finalists will be brought to the council for their approval. But that is in the process of moving forward. We do have a number of applications that we have received thus far. And so I just wanted to add that that is in process. Councilmember Dalpas has been asked to participate because of his assignment as a liaison to the police. We have talked about having more than one council member, so if you are interested, speak with John, get your name on the list. But just a reminder, you will have final approval on the appointment of the police chief. Okay, Councilmember Severing, do you have anything you'd like to report this evening?
I do. Nate Davis, very short with, words, says, we haven't had too many changes, but contractors are starting to dig for some new homes in the last few weeks. So that's all I have from, Nate. Scott has said we have subdivisions for AFCU, America First, and various eating establishments that have been applied for near 2600 in Washington. White Rock Phase 3 was preliminarily approved, and we'll begin building roads and utilities. That's up off the divide, right as you start up the divide on the right. And then development interest is increasing, and the city has a few potential subdivisions that are being discussed, but currently there are no applications.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barker?
Yep, so parks as weather's permitted, they've been aerating, top dressing, and reseeding some of the parks. With the emphasis where soccer is gonna be played, like McGriff, Mountain View, and the top field at Wadman, and they will continue field maintenance on all parks as weather permits. They've started demolition of Woman View Playground, and once it's demoed, they will begin prepping for the new playground to be installed. And then next week, their seasonal job posting should be posted, so you know, you need a good summertime job, tell them to come in. And then they're getting ready for sprinklers and restrooms to be opened up in the next month.
Council, you've probably seen some comments from residents regarding the pickleball courts. I didn't have a chance to drive by there today. I don't know if you had a chance, Councilman Barker, myself did have a discussion. I've asked him to respond to Ashley. But it is a little bit confusing because it seems like the slope of the courts goes like this. So I don't know, it's filled up fairly high at one end, but Council Barker's gonna get to the bottom of that and see how that all works, and then he's gonna respond to Ashley. But it's a little confusing to me. But I did have a chance to go by, and there are 3 homes right there. Obviously, one is right next to the course, but it's fairly limited in number of homes around there. Okay, so Councilman Barker, you'll do that. Anything else? Okay, we'll now go to item 10. Public comments. Once again, if I could just ask you to review on your agendas the rules in regards to public comments. Limiting them to no longer than 5 minutes. Under the podium, please state your name and if you're a resident of North Ogden. Mayor shall, as it says here, have discretion as to who will respond to questions. If there's any responses the council would like to give in regards to earlier comments, they're welcome to do so. And we hope that the responses would be comments or questions that are pertinent to city business that are on the that are not argumentative or personal in nature. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin public comments. John, if you would watch online, I'd appreciate it. Let us know. Otherwise, those who are here, please step up and feel free to make comments.
Hey, my name is Genevieve Payne, North Ogden. So if I'm understanding this right, when this got approved in November, I should have gotten 10 grand. If I'm understanding this right, yeah. And because of the lack of knowledge on the board, I didn't get the amount I should have gotten. That seems really messed up. I mean, lots of this seems really messed up, honestly, but what happens if our home or another home floods again from new cement? Something to think about. We've got multiple pieces from multiple places coming down our road. My neighbors are terrified. Talked to lots of them. You say it didn't come from our pipe, it came from somewhere. It came from lots of somewheres, more than one place. So, I mean, Councilman Dahlpass only lived a block away from where we live now. Could have been his house. So something to think about. I think you need to look into what you're gonna do. Hopefully, if another citizen, I pray it's not me in the future, comes and says, happened again, cements in the line. I'm just curious. So one of my first conversations with Councilman Dahlpass, he told me he didn't have a rider and that we were so responsible for having one. So that, maybe he just didn't remember he had one. So, I don't know if the lie was tonight or then, but, I also would like to say that
Bear,
I think that's a fact.
but when you call people a liar,
Okay, dishonesty then. He told me we were so responsible. He was so impressed that we were so prepared and he didn't have that himself.
once again, I don't want to argue, but please don't make personal attacks
Okay.
on council members.
Okay,
Calling someone a liar would be so.
okay, I'm sorry for calling him a liar, but I feel like that was very dishonest. I do. I think that's fair to say that it was dishonest, that I was told directly one thing, and then tonight I'm told something completely different. That's wild, but I won't call him a liar. I'll just say that was dishonest. I also think that, I don't know how this can't go through the insurance again now with this new information either. That the insurance was like, oh, it sounds like it just came from something new, though this came from two different places. So I think that it's fair to say that this should be presented to the insurance again. Because something wrong is happening here. It is so clear that something wrong is happening. Cement should not be in our sewer lines. Multiple pieces of cement from multiple times should never be in our sewer lines. And finally, this is not a personal attack, but I think it is a very ethical issue that the board needs to know about. And that is that during my last conversation with Councilman Dahlpass, he told me to go he might be crossing a line and that I should go reach out to my bishop because I have a great ward and I can get help there. I think it's super unethical for a city councilman to tell me to go get help, money. I corrected him immediately and told him I think that's immoral. But I don't think council people in our city should be telling me to go to my religious affiliation and getting money for something that's related to the city. I think that crosses all kinds of boundaries. I am leaving so flabbergasted, disappointed, finding out that I should have gotten $10,000. Really, I should have gotten more than that because this is insane. But that I should have gotten $10,000 in November. And because of the lack of knowledge, I don't even get that. I want to know, what's the city going to do about the mystery cement? What are they doing to find out where that's coming from? I'm just left feeling so like, this is my husband's hometown for the last, he's 34 years old. My mother-in-law's hometown for over 50 years, where I wanted to plant my feet and live for decades to come. And now I feel like I have no trust. No trust. This is such a, in my opinion, black and white issue. Do you want to say that the cement didn't come from the city? Where did it come from? You want me to answer questions that you can't answer yourselves. That seems so unfair and wrong. And I'm at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. I just want to end saying that I had a KSL reporter that my mom reached out to. He wanted to do a story on it. And you know what I told him? I want to wait and see if my city does the right thing. I don't want to put something out there and then them do the right thing. But now I know I can tell him freely that they did not handle it ethically. That unethical things were said to me and it wasn't handled right. And I'm sad, but I do hope that everyone in North Ogden who can read that, reads it and knows what their council members are saying and what they're doing to their citizens, because this is wrong.
thank you. Anyone else this evening like to comment?
Philip Swanson, North Ogden City Council, welcome to what you signed up for willingly. It's never easy, and these are particularly difficult times. With regard to Parker Park and the great things that are going on there, please do not avoid ADA requirements in an effort to save cost. Other than maybe down in the hollow where ADA would be virtually impossible to meet, the plans that I saw tonight, I'm a little bit concerned about calling something a pathway so that we can avoid providing ADA access. Because of the work that I've been in for the last nearly 40 years, I can assure you that every one of my clients in wheelchairs will want to access that area. And it would be remiss of the city to call something a pathway so that we can avoid implementing ADA guidelines. I can assure you there would be a large crowd of people in wheelchairs that would show up and give you a piece of their mind because they want to access that. So not saying that that's what you're going to do, just urging you to be sure to be aware of, and let's make sure that we're inclusive of everybody who wants to access that beautiful area, and it will be beautiful when it's done. The only other thing that I have is that it's been all over the news that there was an attempted kidnapping on Sunday afternoon, not far from my neck of the woods at JD, kind of between you and I up in that area. I've had several residents reach out to me and want to know why North Ogden City as a whole on its One North Ogden page and stuff, since it's been essentially verified by the police that it appears that it is real, it's not a hoax, that some kind of warning wasn't sent out to residents that this has happened. Not saying that that should be city policy, just forwarding on to you the comments that have come to me from a number of residents.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Swanson.
And I appreciate each of you and all that you do.
I must add to that if I could, you know, I have a son who's in a wheelchair and is disabled. And I would agree that he has the right to access that park as a citizen of North Ogden. So I would hope that the council does consider that and makes that accessible to all. Okay.
Gary Manning, again, North Ogden. I actually came here tonight because I was concerned about the thought of sewer insurance, because I figure it's going to be about as helpful as earthquake insurance, which my mother had. And it did her no good when that landslide happened, because it turned out you had to have earth moving insurance, you know, there's all these little things that happen with insurance. So I'm very concerned about that. But I will explore other options and submit them to the council. Maybe we can, you know, I go to the dentist twice a year to have my teeth checked. And the things that go in my mouth are far less toxic than what's going through those pipes. So maybe there's a process that we need to find out, a novel approach to look at those pipes at every juncture once a year at least, like we do the dentist. But that's going to be a later issue. I misspoke earlier. I told you guys Washington Terrace was where my mother was. That's Riverdale. I wanted to make sure I have that correct because I don't know if you're taking notes. I also wanted to talk because I heard a lot of comments tonight, you know, is the city responsible to pay? Is it equitable? Is it consistent? I can hear, nobody said precedent, but I can hear that thought. Is it setting a precedent, you know? That's something to look into with your city lawyer, clearly. He can tell you about, you know, that portion of it. But as far as being obligated, I don't think you're obligated to pay, but you are obligated to consider requests with their aggravating, their mitigating circumstances, their attendant situations that are related to them, and measure them on a case-by-case basis. That's what's done in a whole lot of other cases. Again, my mom's home, when it went down in the landslide, it was worth millions, and we walked away with nothing. You know, and that's a hard decision to make. But in considering that equity and fairness, the city, I actually worked with the city manager, not the city council, sorry, over there, but I worked with him, the city attorney, because I wanted to exercise due diligence to do as much as I could to resolve it. You know, her home was full of asbestos. It was very old. And a 4-level home, it was huge. And we had to remove the asbestos because, you know, that presents an issue if that's in the landslide. So I was working with the fire chief and the city manager, trying to find every avenue to help me figure out how to do that. And when I had exhausted my resources, the city stepped in. And I gave them my information. Here's who I found. I've got all these bids, but this is gonna be the most effective, and here's how much it's gonna cost. They paid for it. They did the same thing when it was time to demolish the home. My mom clearly didn't have that money at that point. She was in her 80s. The other homes were being demolished by the mortgage companies that, still owned those properties, but ours wasn't gonna do that. So the city manager, after finding out that I had talked with FEMA and the EPA director and all of these different avenues, I had exercised due diligence to find help, and we couldn't find the money. He talked with the guy that was tearing down the homes on either side of my mom, and the city absorbed the cost to tear down my mom's home using that same contractor. So that's just, when you've done your utmost to do what you can, I just think that the city should step up and help. Maybe it's not the city council that needs to be considering this. Maybe it's something that this young lady should take to the city manager. I don't know how these things work very well. Although I did just find out, she said she lives a block from where JD used to live, so I guess she lives about a block from me too. So now I'm a little more concerned about my sewer lines. But just for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Glenda Gant, North Ogden. First of all, I have to get up here and defend my daughter. I have 3 kids, and in my family I was known as the family storyteller. I think part of why Genevieve is so indignant is she's never lied to me, ever. And she's a very honest person. And I know that she's hurt by what seems like a callous, uncaring board. I'm hurt by it too. I'm actually not so much hurt. I'm hurt for her. I'm kind of shocked. This is y'all's decision. I am, especially since it was your mistake not to pay her what was in your rules in November. She got half of what she should have been paid. I think that's just completely mind-boggling that you don't say, oh, that was our mistake. Let us fix that. Because in my family, the way I was raised, when you make a mistake, you own it. And you do what you can to try to fix it. I also thought it was interesting that Mr. Espinoza, who works for the city of North Ogden, is the sewage line representative here tonight. He was there that day, and he saw that the cause for the flooding was concrete debris in the pipes. It was nothing my daughter had done. It was really nothing that anybody on her street had done. Those concrete pieces are what caused the flooding. I want to know how, and I know I'm not going to get an answer, but I think I'm going to go home and reflect on a lot of things tonight. I want y'all to maybe go home and reflect on what if it had been you. I know we found out that some of y'all don't have flood insurance. This young family who I don't bother to ask how much they make, but I see their budget. They thought ahead to get the insurance, and it's almost like they're getting penalized for that. Well, you got $10,000 from your insurance company. It was over $50,000 worth of damage. So $10,000 is a fifth of that, but it's going to take them another year to even get the downstairs livable. And I just feel like, I hope that when KSL does this interview, and I was the one who contacted KSL, because I love to watch those stories where they say, shame on you. And that's how I feel about my city council tonight. Shame on you that you cannot for a minute stop and put yourself in her place, in Mason's place, in their children's place. That my grandson's been sleeping on the floor forever. And, I think he's forgotten. It's weird. I showed him a picture of him sitting on his bed when he got his new little bed, because his room was the first room they redid. He didn't remember that room. And I just think, you know, I am going to be a person who speaks out about what I saw tonight, because my daddy was very outspoken, and he taught me, if you see something wrong, call it out. And that so many of you so eagerly just voted no. And that someone came up here and said that me as a parent should pay for my children's misfortune from the city's fault. No, I do have money. I do, but I'm not going to pay for y'all's mistake. I'm not going to pay for the city of Ogden's negligence. I'm not. I will help my daughter. I do fun things with her and her kids all the time, but I'm not going to pay for the city of Ogden's mistake. And I'm going to let other people know what I saw here tonight. I saw a few people who showed some compassion, and I appreciate that. And I hope you know that your kindness did not go unseen, but I hope the rest of you know your lack of empathy and concern for one of your citizens, it didn't go unseen either. So I love living in North Ogden. I love being close to my daughter. I think this is a beautiful place to live, but I think perhaps y'all have a lot to look at in how the city is ran, because I feel like if you were just given this question on the test, if your house is flooded by a city sewer line at no fault of your own, who's responsible? It's not my daughter's insurance company. It's not her little savings account. It's the city.
Anyone else like to comment, Steve?
Charlotte Extra North Ogden. I want to thank you all. This is a very, very hard job. It's hard to put yourself in the position of representing not just one person, but everybody. And you've got to allocate resources that are pretty tight. Let's just put it that way. In North Ogden, they're not, we don't run flush, we run pretty lean. And I know bad things happen in home ownership. I've had it happen in my house. Every time a lot rains, I get floodwaters coming up in one of my rooms. So I have a sump pump, but it doesn't mean that things didn't get ruined the first time it happened. And the other thing that I love about living in North Ogden is that it's your neighbors that come and help. They come and help you. And when something happens, when something even happened to the McIntoshes who's there, well, all of the neighbors are showing up and they're helping. And, you know, that's how we do things. It's like, you know, we help each other. And, you know, I'll be the first to volunteer, you know, put together a project and we'll show up. And I know that because I know each of your hearts. And if you have an opportunity to come and help and swing a hammer or donate some materials, you will, because that's who you are. And I appreciate it. And I just wanted to say that to you. Thanks.
Much shorter than Charlotte. Jennifer McDonald from North Ogden. I just wanted to do just a little recap for the night for those who just got home from work, who have to work late like I usually do. So the Paynes only got $5,000. Other families got 10. The city councilman, should we get another $5,000 to the Paynes? No, no, yes, no, yes. That's how that went down. And then a minute later in the meeting, we talked about $15,000 to a utility company. And why did we pay that? Oh, because we just need to hurry and get that taken care of so that we can get on with our building and our progress. So I think from what happened at the very beginning of the meeting, and you guys talked about, we can't do this because this will end up being very expensive for us. Well, if you are having mystery cement in your sewer lines, it should be expensive for you. You guys need to decide how to take care of that. And our neighborhood, frankly, needs reassurances because in May, when all of that cement was in there, And then magically again happens in October. Where did that come from? We don't know. You guys are talking about this new plastic lining for the sewer and it's definitely not the sewer. Well, we are not dumping cement down our toilets. It's not coming from the homeowners. It is not the homeowner's responsibility. The city needs to let us know where this is from, how it happened, and how they're gonna stop it from ever happening to anyone again. Because after you voted to not give her extra $5,000, you all went along and voted to just take out the ordinance altogether so that we never have to talk about this for any other homeowner. So if any other homeowner has sewer damage from the North Ogden city line, we can't come before you because you voted, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. We're all paying attention to that. Let's talk about a couple of other things that we talked about throughout the night. I am a little fuzzy during this because I was dealing with a work email while you were talking about this. Did I hear $250,000 for a quarter-acre usable park?
No, that's the general lot cost right now in North Ogden is about $250,000. So to get 4 acres for $12,000 from the county is financially, if it's a usable area, seems like a good financial decision.
Seems like a good financial decision to take on this steep slope of no parking lot park that only that one little tiny neighborhood would be able to use, because no one's gonna walk up the hill, no one's gonna bike up the hill, but let's do our due diligence and look at that. But they can't have their extra $5,000, even though the other families did. And then we talked about a free park that we all know isn't gonna be free, because we're gonna be using city funds, we're gonna be using city equipment, we're gonna be using this, and this, and down the line, the city's gonna have to be funding to take care of that down the line. But don't take care of families when a problem in your sewer line, North Ogden City sewer line, destroys their home. And I do just want to mention, go to your church. So sacred city funds are different than sacred tithing funds. That just blows my mind. The fact that you're totally willing to let her think that that's her only option. Our religion didn't put cement in our sewer lines. I feel completely betrayed by what happened to them. And when my house is next, because I'm next down the line, I'll know who I can't count on.
My name is Mason Payne. I have a few questions. If we recall back to the November meeting that we came and presented at, I recall, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, that there was enough money in the sewer fund to cover the entirety of our issue. Is that true? From the sewer fund that was mentioned. I can move on. I would like that answered eventually though. So, and then next one is, if this keeps happening, what are you guys gonna do? I'm not the first one to say that. And probably won't be the last, unfortunately. The next question I have is, what is considered a sewer failure? When would it ever be your fault? You do inspections, I was told, every 3 years. Whether that's true or not, that sits on you guys. 3 years of an inspection, there's a lot that can be done. A lot of failure that can happen. Also, along with that question, is a city sewer line not functioning as properly designed a failure? For it to be backing up into our home? And could that be the case made to go back to the insurance? I had a few other written down. I'm usually not the one that talks. My wife gets our thoughts out. So this is hard for me, so.
Just making sure I cover everything here. Oh, and I think just my last thing here is, I'd just like to point out the fact that Councilman Pass, your father sells insurance. You have a strong position to not support this. I mean, your father wanted to talk to me after, wanted to talk to me during the break. He's talking to people back there about insurance. I feel like that's a conflict of interest, just to be completely honest. I think it could sway your opinion on what's happening. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you.
Dave Robinson, North Ogden. I just have two things I'd like the city to consider maybe. I think you hold the cards with these developers. I feel that's where the debris came from. I was there the day the flooding took place. I think you guys know as well as that's where it came from. If there's a way that the city, they don't need to financially be responsible for this necessarily, if where you hold the cards, these developers would be held responsible. I know there was 2 different projects in that subdivision that they did on the sewer system that I'm almost sure that things aren't coincidental. I'm almost sure that's where that debris came from. And I'm just down the road from the paint as well, so I'm just waiting for my turn here. But if the city could just help with these developers to hold them more responsible, it would sure be a load off a lot of people's minds. Second thing, when they do these kind of modifications, why is there not a process to put a screen or some sort of debris catcher while they're doing these modifications, and then run a scope, just run a line up there, make sure there's nothing in the sewer system. And I know this isn't going to help the Paynes, but I do feel that they're the innocent party here. And if it's simply to do what's right, to give them the extra money, that isn't going to cover the cost of this rebuild. This remodel is going to be far more than $10,000. And yes, neighbors are willing to pitch in. There was probably 15 of us there that day, and we all seen it. We all know what kind of debris came out of there. We were trying to help them try to keep their basement from filling completely up with sewer. You look through the basement window and see their tub full of turds floating around, and it's pretty disgusting. And I feel bad for them. I just think there's a way that the city could help and do the right thing.
Stephanie Casey, North Ogden resident. As you guys know, I've attended meetings pretty religiously for about 5 years. I've seen you guys work. I see how you guys think about decisions, and very often I disagree with you. So I'm gonna just say that. Tonight I saw you guys really think about the city as a whole, and I appreciate that. I feel really awful for the Paynes. That's a terrible situation. I've known people in my neighborhood whose home flooded, and it would have been great for everyone to get some money to help with that. I just wanted to tell you guys that was a hard decision. I agree with the choice that you made. I can see the differences in city responsibility and actual, being proven this is where the problem is, to, hey, there's this, it could be. And that's hard. That's hard. I felt like I had to stand up because I know that none of those decisions were made without empathy or any of the things that I heard you accused of. And I understand that emotions are hard, and you are the sounding board for residents who have nowhere to go and are angry at the city. That's gonna come to you guys. And I don't think that's easy. And I can see it in your faces, because I know that every one of you guys do care. And if you could, you would just fix it. But you can't. You represent over 20,000 people. And so I don't think there was any unethical things that happened. I think it's great that as a community you can help residents, you know, with any resource that can help them. You can't just walk up and just fix it for them. So giving them options of resources that may be helpful to them. You know, it's part of being a community. We work together, but I just wanted you all to know that I really appreciate. And I can see it in your faces, and I think that that's really hard, but after being here and watching you every week, I know that it wasn't with lack of empathy or caring. And that's not to take away from what they feel. Sadly, that's who you guys are. You're gonna get it all. You represent the city, and so when people are angry and hurt and frustrated, it's gonna come to you. So, thank you.
Thank you. John, did you say someone online would like to comment?
Yes, we have Susan Kilborn.
Hey, Susan? Can you hear us?
Susan Kilborn, never, ever more proud to be a citizen standing up for my and your North Ogden City Council tonight. What you guys had to deal with today is almost unfathomable to me. I know how hard that had to be for you. There isn't enough pay to pay you for what you have gone through tonight. And I am giving you a Kilborn standing ovation because there was so much emotion involved in this issue and still is, but you took the logical path. And I'm going to make two statements and then I'm going to unload and I'm going to do it. And Mayor, you best not cut me off. I'll try and stay
within your 5 minutes. I'm good.
Yeah, well, you've cut other people's slack, so don't you dare cut me off. Please.
I've got a timer here. He's the one that's
That's
telling me.
right. So do I. So here we go. First of all, North Ogden City, it has already been proven, does not have the responsibility, nor has been proven liable in this situation. Second of all, we are not a 501c charitable organization. Why do we have a budget committee and a citizens budget committee to save money to turn around and throw away dollars? I had compassion for the Payne family, but now I don't. I would have gone to work to do something to raise money to help them. But their disrespect to everyone tonight is unfathomable. To call a city council member a liar and to put the blame for dirty diapers and turds in their house from an incident that the city was not responsible for, seriously, and to the Payne family, go to KSL because I'm going to be right on your tail behind you telling my end of it. And I've got the facts. And that's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else tonight? Let me just take prerogative here as the mayor on a few things. First of all, Mr. Speechley is not JD's father.
Father-in-law.
His father-in-law.
Yep.
And he's entitled, just like any other citizen, to comment. I think the other thing too, I just want to clarify here is, I believe if I understood tonight, that one of the declining votes was on the fact that there was the resolution itself said if there was insurance coverage. So it wasn't denied totally on the fact that there wasn't a budget, that it was missed. I'm just speaking in facts here, that it wasn't denied strictly on it wasn't budgeted. The resolution also says that the city has the option to pay up to 10,000. So I know, you know, your feeling of why didn't you get 10,000 in November? The argument probably would have been the same then as it is now. Just pointing that out. And as you know, we did have the cement tested in hopes that we could find out where it came from. Unfortunately, we couldn't, and just like anyone else, you know, it would seem coincidental that it would happen at the same time. But just like anyone else is entitled to their innocence until proven guilty, so is the developer. I mean, I know it sounds really coincidental and what happened there, but we tried to find out what was going on with testing, so I think the city did that. I appreciate some of the comments that have been made this evening. I just want to point out that I know those emotions are very high, and I understand that. You know, I thought if it was my place, I'd probably have a lot of the same emotions. No doubt about it. But I want to say that I know the hearts of these council members. And they're not perfect. I'm not perfect. But in my heart, I know that they do have a lot of empathy. I know they're trying to do the right thing. And that they're good people. Doesn't mean that they're perfect by any means. But I just want to point that out that, as was said earlier, it's definitely not an easy job. It's a hard job, and but I appreciate everyone's comments, and I've always said I don't always agree, but I will respect everyone's comments. And so those who made comments tonight, I know it was your feelings, and I respect everyone's comments. So I just want to make those few comments as we wrap up tonight. Staff, do you have any comments this evening? Everyone shaking their head no. Council, do you have anything further? Councilmember Pulver.
I just want to ping on one thing for, there's a lot of people making comments about budget, and being part of the city budgets committee last year and the lead for it this year, I want to make sure that everybody understands that that's open to anybody. It is a very complicated system. People think that there's all this money here and there that can be spent on wherever you want, and it's very tough. There's certain things that you cannot spend as a city government, and it's just very confusing. And I encourage anybody that is willing to, it's on the schedule. Watch it online, come down. So I encourage participation in that. It's just not the budget committee. It's every citizen is welcome to just come to that.
Any other comments by council this evening? Dave, would you make sure you follow up on those pictures that came in and the unsafe situation down there in the hollow of Barker Park?
Yes.
Will you take a look at that and see what we can do? Do you have copies of those pictures that came in?
No, but I'll make sure I get them.
We can get those. Also just want to let the rest of the council know that the Chamber of Commerce is asked to come and tour our city, what's going on with economic development along with Pleasant View. They'll be meeting over here, about 60 members of Chamber of Commerce in a new facility. I think it's on the 12th of April. If I recall, they'll be taking a tour of the city. Also, I should probably inform the council, I've been asked by the county to submit a letter in regards to our willingness to accept a donation of a large, I guess I would say, LED, is that the proper thing? LED screen that I became aware of just recently. Obviously, there's some obligations that come with that. But there was a RAP grant given based upon the fact that the city agreed to do that. And I didn't want to, hopefully you'll know I'll do my due diligence on that and find out, but I just wanted to let you know that has been requested, and I may be write out letter if you have any questions. Please feel free to to contact me. Okay,
I have one comment.
Ryan?
I just wanted to tell everybody that the next meeting will be in the new public safety building, as will next week's planning commission meeting as well. So just wanted everybody to know.
Thank you, Ryan. With that, if there are no other comments, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.